This is the News Wire. I'm La Ubaga. Kenya has officially appealed to the Vietnamese government to hold the impending execution of Margaret Duta, a Kenyan national facing capital punishment in the Southeast Asian country. Foreign Affairs Principal Secretary Korir Singaway revealed in a statement on his X page that he held a telephone conversation with Vietnam's Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs, that is Nguyen Minh Hang, on Sunday regarding the matter. During the conversation, Singaway conveyed the anxiety of the Kenyan people over Duta's fate and reiterated Kenya's formal request for a stay of execution. He emphasized the need for both nations to explore a diplomatic resolution to the issue. Vietnam is known for its strict drug-related laws, and it remains unclear whether Kenyan diplomatic efforts will influence the final decision. Meru Deputy Governor Isaac Mutuma will be sworn in today as Meru's county's new governor at Mwandantu Stadium. That is the grounds, according to a Gazette notice dated March 14th, 2025. It states that the general public is invited to the swearing-in ceremony, which will start at 8:30 a.m. Meru County is said to have a new governor following the High Court's decision to uphold the impeachment of Governor Kawira Mwangaza by the Senate. In a judgment delivered on Friday, Justice Bahati Mwamuye ruled that the petition challenging her removal did not meet the legal threshold to overturn the Senate's decision. The judge affirmed that Mwangaza was accorded a fair hearing and dismissed her plea to invalidate the Gazette notice confirming her removal. UDA and ODM leaders, while attending a religious service of various denominations in Kiplombe, Uasin Gishu County, had a number of political issues to raise. Led by Deputy Majority Leader in the National Assembly, Owen Baya, he accused former Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua and his associates of pursuing divisive politics. Baya also urged Wiper leader Kalonzo Musyoka to distance himself from Gachagua if he wanted to lead the nation.
Nataka kuambia wale watu ambao bado wanashikana na huyu mtu mkabila, huyu mtu wa mitego, huyu mtu ambaye alitaka kuligawanya hili taifa la Kenya ati kwa sababu they want to benefit from his tribal antics, hata hao watashindwa. Na tuambie huyu mtu wa kupitia katikati awachane kufuatana na huyu mtu kwa sababu hata anaona he will benefit. He will not. Kenyans are cleverer. They do not want tribalism. They do not want.
Furthermore, Senate Majority Leader Aaron Cheriot dismissed the call for a moratorium on donations to churches, a statement that was echoed by Bungoma Governor Ken Lusaka.
Unajua hii Kenya, rais wetu alituambia hivi makaribuni, tusipojichunga tutawachia shetani atawale kupitia fitina na maneno ya uongo. Kama imefika pahali hata sadaka na harambee katika kanisa ati inafanyiwa kesi mpaka kwa magazeti na vyombo vya habari, mjue basi nyinyi kama kanisa lazima pia nyinyi msimame wima. Msiposimama wima, tutapimiwa mpaka sadaka ile ambaye tunatoa kwa kanisa. Utakuwa unaambiwa usitoe, ama ukitoa ifanye hii na hii peke yake.
Mimi wakati tumekuja kutoa sadaka na wakati tunatoa, si kuona mtu akiulizwa hii ulitoa wapi. Nobody was being asked to explain the source of the money alikuwa anapeana. Kwa hivyo kwa nini tuulize wengine? Unaweza kuleta shilingi moja umeiba na mwingine aleta shilingi milioni moja ila amefanya kazi kwa bidii, na yote inaombewa.
The leaders also dismissed claims that subsidized fertilizer is being given in a discriminatory manner.
Wale unaweza pumbaza pengine ni wale wa Facebook na Twitter kule Nairobi ambao hawajui chakula inapandwa namna gani, au utadanganya kwa sababu ni watu wameshinda tu pale na wanapiga story. Lakini huyu mwananchi wa kawaida hapa mashinani anajua ukweli wa mambo ambayo ile maneno inaendelea Kenya hii, na hawezi kudanganywa na kupotoshwa na habari za uongo ambazo zimejaa sana katika taifa letu la Kenya.
Wanaanza kusema kwamba there is so much fertilizer coming to Uasin Gishu kuliko sehemu nyingine ya Kenya. Yaani kichwa yenu is so wired to separatist. Katika Uasin Gishu hapa ndio tunapanda mahindi ama namna gani? Komi mabwasa konge fertilizer kwa amumo iko kulini.
That's the News Wire. I'm Lea Ubaga.
.5 SpiceFM, Kisumu.
The following takes place from 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. every weekday on SpiceFM.
It's critical that people pay taxes. But then taxation has to have a limit. When you start overtaxing people beyond certain limit, then this is now we call robbery with violence.
We are all struggling, but we don't show. If you're not doing well, shame on you. But you have to say, I'm broke and I'm struggling. We are not okay until everybody is okay.
We are pretending to have political parties. Why don't we just be honest? And we say, these are the Luyas, these are the Kambas, these are the Kikuyus, and we find ourselves in Kenya.
With politics and leadership, no matter what you do, there will always be a complaint. There will always be the assumption that you're either stealing or you're not doing things right. As a leader, don't fear. If you know you're doing the right thing, you've thought about it, you've got an expert advice, do it, then understand later.
This country, we don't need prayers. Prayers is between you and God. Good governance and thinkers who care about the country and not their stomach.
The Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation.
Traffic updates brought to you by M-Pesa.
Welcome to Spice FM, the best exclusive radio station bringing you the best mix of the best music ever. Traffic.
Taking into stock what's happening this morning on the roads, let's take a quick look at what's making traffic today. A little bit of traffic is already starting to build up on the Thika Superhighway, and we'll see that coming through towards Survey at some point. Also, some traffic is starting to build up on the Eastern Bypass pretty early for that side of the city. Also then coming in through towards Westlands, coming off of Waiyaki Way. We'll see some of that moving towards the CBD this morning. Mombasa looks good for most parts of it. The rain is still coming down in some parts, so we're going to keep an eye on all of this as we get into Monday proper, and we're going to keep an eye on the roads, and you're going to help us out to moving things this morning. Talk to us on SpiceFM KE on X, hashtag The Situation Room.
Traffic updates brought to you by M-Pesa. Calling all rugby enthusiasts. We're on the hunt for girls and young women who are passionate about rugby and ready to bring the best cheer to the global cheer squad for Kenya Sevens. Show your love for the sport by sharing your most spirited cheer videos on social media, tagging SpiceFM and using hashtag M-Pesa behind every moment.
Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
A very good morning to you. I'm dusting off the last week. Somebody did something. Where?
Didn't you?
I just did, actually. A very good morning to you. Dennis, good morning.
Good morning, how are you?
I'm fine, thank you.
Looking very beautiful in that red, man.
Why, thank
really,
you.
Really good, yeah.
Asante sana.
Karibu.
Even though Tunand.
As you can see.
As you can see. Where's Salama?
Salama, shukuru. Yeah, I trained overnight, but it's good, it's proper.
You know,
at least the temperatures have gone down, so yeah.
I know. Yeah. So the weatherman said that, it was going to rain from Sunday and then intensely all the way till Tuesday. So he waited through yesterday, waited. And then somebody said to me, you know what? It's going to start raining on Monday at 3 a.m. I was like, okay, let's see.
Well, what are you doing at around 10 p.m.?
I was asleep.
Then it started raining.
It started raining, while I was asleep. And that's what I found out this morning.
Yep.
Yeah. C'est ça, c'est la vie, no? Good morning, CT.
Good morning, dude.
How are you?
C'est la vie, no?
C'est la...
Oui. Yes.
Exactly. C'est la vie.
How are you today?
I'm all right.
How's the weekend?
Oh, it was okay, actually.
Okay.
It was just, it was good.
Dennis?
It was all right.
Salama sana, alhamdulillah, nashukuru.
Asante bwana. Ongera sana bwana. Yes.
We'll find any weekend, CT.
Mimi, that's what I usually do.
Just chilling.
Nothing.
Just chilling.
Yes.
Yeah. Why? It's good. I'm telling you.
If you don't recharge the batteries, man, by the end of Monday, you're knackered.
You're saying,
and it's one day.
I'm tired tomorrow.
Yeah.
Many things did happen still over the weekend, and we're looking into it. Welcome to Kenya's biggest conversation, into the Situation Room for the week, and hope that you're doing All right. And let's get into the week with a number of conversations that we'll be having today. So let me just give you a brief of what will be. And before we get into it, I have to remind you that our live streams are up. They're up on Facebook, they're up on YouTube and on X. And we'll be joined by our audience on KTN, and as well as everybody who clicks in 94.4 in Nairobi and those frequencies around the country. Karibuni sana, getting into it this morning. So what are some of the conversations that we'll be having today? Well, let me let you in on it, shall I? At 7 a.m., Shegem Waura is an MCA and at Ngara and Secretary General of the County Assemblies Forum, that is CAF, this particular CAF. We'll be talking about strengthening legislative oversight for transparent leadership. That's the conversation that we'll have at 7 a.m. with the MCR. And then, lighting the nation in a good way, the sustainability strategy. Dr. Engineer Joseph Siror is the Managing Director and CEO of the Kenya Power Lighting Company, KPLC, and he will join us at 8 o'clock. And then finally at 9 today, we'll round up our conversations with the Commissioner for Refugee Affairs, and John Burugu will be talking to us about the effects of USAID withdrawal on refugee support in Kenya. It's a big deal, and we know that Kenya, I believe in Africa, the second largest host of refugees, and so if there's aid that's pulled out, what does it actually mean? So we'll be looking at the effects of that at 9. And those form our conversations, getting into it this morning, putting things in order to have Kenya's biggest conversation. Ednah, Okoh, bad, somewhere. She has not waved at me. But she's there. And getting into it this morning, hope everybody is doing well and clicking into it. And we're going to say hello to you in just a minute. Like I said, getting into the live streams today, shall we? All right, let's do it. Folks who are already clicking in and saying good morning, everybody. And already in the room today is Ivan Omondi Odera. We see you right in the middle of it. Spicy, bright, beautiful Monday morning to you, Spicy Studio Sirens. Miss Kia, good morning to you. Don Salbot wants me to ask CT, who is the current starring actor in Kenyan political acrobatics? Yeah. Okay, let me start again. Who is the current starring actor in Kenya political acrobat film? Jeez, I don't know. But I don't know.
Don Salbot knows. But don't tell us. Who is it?
Wadzi Wakujoa is what you say for acrobat in Malawi. Sawa. If you can do that tongue twister this morning, kudos to you. Cyprian Kambuni says good morning from Dayton in Minnesota. Linus Gitonga says good morning. It's a new week and good morning to all. Bonjour mes amis, says Michael Olande. Bonjour à toi. What, à vous? Are we just being more polite this morning? R says wewe. Hata wewe.
Sisi. Iko nini?
Robert Mbogo is tuning from Ombaso this morning. And Joe Mungai says, from Bonnie Lake, Washington, sending my prayers to the family of Duta, who's facing execution in Vietnam. We're not quite sure where those negotiations are as of yesterday. The PS in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Kidoro Singoe, had said that they had a conversation with his counterparts in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Vietnam, and the assurance that he got was that the petition would be taken into consideration. That's as far as we were as of last night. But we're looking into details of that story in the headlines today. Chamgay, my beautiful people, says Anne Gore says, she's in Nairobi now. Apenda sana tunakupenda pia. Krisa Daniel is tuned in this morning from Atiak in Uganda. And good morning, my favorite stationers. It says ambivert optimist. You decided that you're an ambivert optimist. Sawa sawa. Looking forward to a great show. So George Gashoridi is tuned in. It's time for spice and coffee. Indeed. Good morning, kings and queens. Arise and shine. Today is our day to conquer. Let's go and conquer. Kitengela is locked. Good morning, Spice family. Tuned from Naivasha. We're soon to be hosting a lot of Kenyans in Naivasha. Oh, yeah. Safari Rari. It's this weekend, is it not?
Yeah.
Leo says, hello, Princess Ndu and Aseto. Ruto, we will never allow a mongrel undemocratic system of government. It has happened again. Okay. Tibbs Muga is tuned in this morning. Says, good morning, team. What is happening in Lamu? To tell us. And I hope the chapatis are free. I hope so too. Good morning, Watu. Hope Muko okay, says Agola. Good morning to you, my dear. Good morning, SpiceFM. Listening from Rongo, says George Adimo. Jimmy Gakio is tuned in this morning and says, happy new week. Tuned in from Swanage in Dorset in the UK. Good week this is, says Washuka. Good morning to you. Erica War is tuning in this morning and says, good morning. Yeah, we saw a lot of statements come over the weekend, and a lot of those were made overtly and, behind the closed doors at the funeral service of retired Colonel Mohati. Ivan Omondi Odera says, good morning and a bright Monday to you all. Good morning, SpiceFM, listening in from Feather, says Joe Awori. Desmond Otis says, Ndu looks like a president's wife. Sorry, excuse me. How do president's wife look?
Like you.
What do they say?
Manifestation.
You say those things and move it forward. I'm liking this thing. I can like to just be living that soft life. Good morning, great. Well, thank you, Desmond. Good morning, great people. Have a blessed week to you too. Good morning, y'all. Congratulations to the Starlets for a thriller match. Yes, they played very well. That was great to watch. Good morning, Spice and Sugar. What's the comparison between Kenya and Burkina Faso? Okay.
They're both in Africa.
Oh, yeah.
They both have Africans living inside.
Yes.
The Africans.
The Africans, yeah.
What else can we compare?
They have gold. We have gold in Migori. So, yeah.
They have a president? Yeah. Kenya has a president?
Yeah.
Sendo? What again are you looking for? Not much.
Yes, carry on.
Good morning from Tudor, says Dr. Van Vick. Bossman says, good morning from a rainy Washington, D.C. Well, good morning from a rainy Kenya. It's raining all over the country. Meshach Panga says, good morning. Where is the report for the demised General Ogola? Yes, there was a report that was supposed to be coming out in terms of what happened with the crash that he was in. I thought the investigation was going to be made public. That is what we heard as well. Charles Ndieka says, good morning. Greetings from Boston. Hello, good people. Happy Monday from Dallas, says Anthony Karanja. Jambo kutoka Tampa Bay, says Octin. Bossman, he says, you're requesting a seat in the hotel seat. Which hotel? Tarbaj is where Diad is tuned in from. Meru is where Jaru is. Good morning, the greatest team ever. SpiceFM Big Table. Ndu just reminded me of one of the class teachers who used to wear red on Monday. Bas. It's a power color.
You know what the Viboko means?
Viboko is... Whip.
Yes.
Bas. No, I'm not whipping anybody, I beg. I wonder how does the president run a country with hundreds of reporters can't find him and ask him deep questions? What do you mean can't find him? So we know where he is. Good morning, team. Tuned in the Situation Room for Merrill in Marsabit County. Merile, right?
Yeah.
I want to say Merrill. Merile in Marsabit County from Texas says, great show. Danley is tuned in this morning. Good morning from Doha, Princess Ndu Dennis and CT. Bishop Olesapit saved us on Sunday from Monday headlines. Indeed, he did make a statement yesterday. Where says, good morning, tuned in from Al Khor in Doha. And who else is here? Bamburi is tuned in. Rodo Bass says, good morning. Oh, you're tuned in from Chile, Santiago Metropolitan Region. Really? Well, everybody's clicked into the room this morning. Always great to have you guys. And karibuni sana to the second to last Monday. No. Yes, second to last. So there's two more, isn't it? Of March. And everybody, thank you always for joining us every morning. Always great to have you in the room. And we're starting another week in another country and another proverb, CT.
Yes, we are still in the Coup Belt, closer to home. We are in the Sudan, the Republic of the Sudan. Did you know that Sudan got independence on 17th November 1958. That's the year. Oh, wow. That's the year I was born, by the way.
Oh, voila.
Yes. And since it got independence, it has had a total of 7 coups d'etats.
Wow.
7.
Wow.
The latest one came in 2021. So when you hear that it's part of the coup belt, you shouldn't be surprised.
For good reason.
Yes. And yet, you also didn't know, perhaps, that Sudan is the 3rd largest producer of gold on the continent.
Oh, wow.
Third largest?
Indeed, wow.
Didn't know that, actually.
No, most people didn't know. Okay. Can you guess who it is? Which country on this continent produces the most gold?
Not DR Congo?
Nope.
No, it's not. Ghana?
Yes.
Yeah.
Correct. Ghana, followed by?
Burkina Faso?
South Africa.
South Africa.
Burkina Faso comes, it's fifth. Fourth is Mali. Fifth is Burkina Faso. So the interesting thing is Mali is in the Coup Belt. Burkina Faso is in the Coup Belt. Sudan is in the Coup Belt. 3 out of 5.
In the Coup Belt.
And they all produce gold. Now, begs the question, these coups that we see, are they about reforms or are they about reforms? Okay.
Because you can even have that conversation and look at those who own the mines in South Africa and what locals are saying about that as well. So, yeah.
Oh, that is a completely different story. And if you're going to go to South Africa, then you need to ask the question, the South African influence, not the country, but individuals who are investors in DRC. Because there is a presence.
Yes, there is.
Okay? And there is investment that has been there for the longest time. Which begs the question, who else has interest? Which begs the question, why do we have the problem in Bukavu and Goma?
Yeah.
Begs the question, why does DRC and Rwanda have this tiff?
Yes.
These chilled relations.
Yes. Is it just chilled relations or is it chilled relations?
Or is it unchilled relations?
Yes. Or is metallic? Right. Proverbs from the Sudan. Empty stomachs have no roots. Empty stomachs have no roots.
You know, when you think stomach, you think food.
Yeah.
But also, I remember my dad used to talk about, like, he used to ask always, what's in your belly? Like, what's that thing that gives you, life? It's got to be grounded to something. So that thing inside of you, if it's not grounded to something,
I mean, even if you just think about it in terms of food, it's always on the low side of the Baileys. But then again, even for those who drink, you're told, please have proper foundation before drinking. So, yeah. Siti nimesema tu.
Nimekusikia tu.
Deep.
Yeah.
Profound.
Yeah. Quite. All right. It's going to be interesting to hear what folks have to say about that. But I mean, it just takes me. You have to be. There's got to be some kind of grounding.
Yeah.
For the thing that propels you. Right. Shall we look into the headlines? For the one that we do have, the Standard, Kenya's bold newspaper. The headline today: road tax tyranny. The government's plan to introduce road tolls could generate 4.8 trillion shillings. But at what cost? Critics say it is another financial strain on Kenyans, benefiting private firms while raising transport costs, with debt rising and infrastructure needs mounting. Is this a solution or just another levy on an already overtaxed public? It's a question, but we'll look into the details of that story. Another one that, basically the world is watching, Kenya is watching. She left for work. Now she faces a death sentence. This, of course, is the story of Miss Duta and what could possibly happen any time now, actually, in about 8 hours or so. Boon for retirees in new proposals. Those are some of the things that we'll be looking at as well, and just looking into some stories that are making headlines indoor. Shah, 11.4 billion shilling payout sparks fears of corruption and ghost facilities. Oi, there's a payment controversy, and we'll be looking into that as well. Kenya fights to save women from execution. That's the story we talked about. We'll look into, and Olesapit bars Gachagua, Kalonzo, and others from speaking at a church service. Yes, he did. He was at the St. Stephen's Anglican Church on Jogori Road yesterday, where his bishops were in tow, and he said, you know what? 2 things are not going to happen. Well, they can happen, but they'll happen differently. Number 1, you can give donations, but it is between you and God, so those will not be made public anymore. We will not be announcing those. And number 2, you can attend church. We can greet you and you can wave. If you feel that you need to speak to people, politically, you may do that outside the church after the service. And he was very clear. And he said, my bishops have all, and I'm glad that they're all here because they've all been told that that's what we're going to do. As per the Anglican Church, that's the position that we've taken. If you don't like it,
lump it.
Thanks.
Yeah, it's been real.
Period. Thanks. So he's come out and he's not joking about that either. Counties ignore SRC orders and they blow budget on rent for top officials. SRC said spend 20,000. They said, SRC, watch me, 100K. Bah!
As City would say, SRC. No.
20 watts. That's for you, man. CC, 100K, we're spending it.
Yeah.
You can be the SRC and you can be mandated by law.
What they're unleashing.
But we are the county.
You may be, but do you know what you are unleashing?
Anarchy. I'll tell you the details of that one. But they said, you know what? No. They capped the rent for speakers' residents at 150K per month for more major cities like Nairobi, Mombasa, Kisumu, and 75,000 for others. So now, when they went to find out how much had actually been spent, it was well over that particular amount. But I'll give you details of that. Sawa. City, do you have anything digitary?
That's it.
Thanks, please.
Right. Mount Kenya governor at odds with financiers over successor. Okay. That's in the corridors of power. Maina, a man on a mission to expand SGR to Malaba. Who is Maina? Maina is a Kenya Railway MD. Okay? It's a man who's risen through the ranks to get to the position where he's now MD Kenya Railways. Cope Equity Banks, thank you, stocks to watch as T-bill yields drop. Why don't I just give you Z hard copy and you can read Z hard copy. Sawa sawa?
Sawa sawa.
Mambo sawa sawa?
Mambo sawa sawa.
I knew you. That is where you'd go with it. That's why I said sawa sawa. I was cognizant.
Unanijua?
Nakujua vizuri sana. Yes.
Sasa utaendelea?
Yes, bang in the middle of the paper. It's also bang in the middle of the digital paper. KRA goes for small traders. Government is exploring new ways of taxing small businesses to ease the burden on salaried individuals and corporates. You know, this story is not new. The story that would be new and would be wonderful is if one read, the government has a stimulus package for small businesses and small traders to the tune of X billion shillings, and this is how they are going to go about it. The government has released X amount of billions of shillings for the pending bills that have been XYZ for so long. That would be a direct injection into the economy of monies that would then spur the sort of activities that you can then tax. But if you begin with tax and end with the tax, all you're doing is you're heading towards what we call diminishing returns.
Kabisa.
Yes.
Kabisa.
So, pay the pending bills. Okay? Come up with stimulus packages over a period so that businesses can be revived, people can be employed, more and more people can have an income so that you can have more and more people you can tax.
Just pay.
Once this happens, that more money that you want, you will get. Yes.
Just pay.
But this one, we are more or less dredging the bottom of the barrel. Okay. Gachagua and Kalonzo muted as Sapit enforces pulpit ban on politicians. Family agony over son abducted outside Garissa law courts 4 years ago. The story isn't going to go away, is it? No, it isn't. Let me look at the Business Daily. Debt service costs up 69 billion on higher domestic rates. Kenya's public debt payments rose by 68.7 billion over the 6 months to December 2024. If debt repayments rose, then they rose, didn't they?
They did.
Yes, KCB cedes 30% share to G2G oil deal payments. KCB has ceded a 30% share of payments made under the government-to-government oil deal as part of risk management. I don't understand that. But no, I don't.
Yeah.
But when I read it further, I probably understand it.
Indeed.
Big ticket deal keeps Kenyan law firms on global ranking list. Big ticket deals, including Bamburi sale of its Uganda subsidiary Hema Cement to a consortium, has retained Kenyan law firms on a newly released global ranking of lawyers. So they have lawyers, lawyer number 1, lawyer number 2, lawyer number 3, lawyer number, no number, and so forth and so forth. All right. City Hall disowns 33.9 billion Jamia Mosque roundabout deal. Okay? City Hall has said, Sisi, deal, Jamia Mosque. Sorry. Jamia Mosque is seeking 3.9 billion for ceding land used to build a Matatu terminus at Nairobi Globe Cinema roundabout. So City Hall is saying, we don't know what you're talking about. So, okay. Back in the middle of the paper, let me just say on the top right-hand corner, Life, the rise of women on the Gulf Coast. This is a story on page 19. Okay? Right. In the intelligence pages, years of starvation from county revenue allocations are now biting us where it hurts most. This is an article written by Carol Musioka. Most stolen vehicles revealed as recovery rises to 15%. Station wagons, lorries, most preferred by thieves. Number of insured vehicles reported stolen drops by 28%. You have a high chance of losing a car to thieves if it's a station wagon, white in color, and a Toyota brand insured for less than 1 million shillings. Okay?
So, in other words, thieves are stealing standard
Their cars which
cheaper
are easy,
vehicles.
Well, they're easy to get rid of.
Right.
Okay.
Because you're not going to, if a 4x4, flashing at you, you're not going to be able to hide it. Number one, you're not going to be able to sell it off really quickly.
Yes, but these ones are many.
Yeah.
You can, there are very many, very, very many.
Yeah.
So one wants to notice there are certain cars, these high value type cars, and you'll be seen a mile off.
It's true.
Yeah.
Okay.
Tuambie haraka, what's in the nation?
Daily Nation. Okay. I think I'll go as City would say it. In Tacos Green, top of the paper, senators want counties given 465 billion. Now, this sets the stage for another battle with the national government, as the Treasury is proposing that devolved units get 405.1 billion shillings equitable share for the financial year ending June 30th, 2026. Only time will tell where these will end and how jobs and pay crises hit families. Shrinking pay for employees and job cuts have hit families hard as purchasing power for households has declined in recent years. Now, a parliamentary committee report shows households will plunge into further financial distress owing to harsh policies like the skewed methods being applied to determine what families pay for university education and a state-run medical scheme. Now, that says employment rate declined from 4.9% in 2018 to 4.4% in 2023. And hustlers suffer as big fish evade 7 billion shillings taxes. Now, some institutions that Okello failed to remit pay as you earn that they deducted from employees' pay slips, while others did not deduct withholding tax from money paid to suppliers. And the killer Matatu crew jailed for life and offer no lesson to rogue peers. These as below that, inside Kenya's political merry-go-round, the political stage is persistently dizzying carousel of intrigue and upheaval. Imagine leaving the country 6 months ago and returning now. You'd find a new deputy president, Kithure Kindiki, and President William Ruto calling his once bitter rival Raila Odinga, my brother, and what? Prime Minister.
Who'd have thunk it?
Yeah.
Who would have thunk it? We'll look into details of those stories, coming into it this morning. Let's take a break real quick and look at what's happening with it. Looks like it's going to rain through the next couple of days and it's going to be heavy in many parts of the country. We'll take a look at also what's happening on the roads as we get into Monday proper. Don't go away. It's 26 minutes to 7. It's Kenya's biggest conversation, The Situation Room.
This is The Situation Room, the only way to start your mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice the weather with SpiceFM.
Cloudy and rainy conditions in Nairobi this morning, highs of 26 and lows of 15. It's clear in Nakuru for now with highs of 26, and we'll see highs of 25 in a mostly clear Nyeri at 16. Eldoret is mostly clear at 14 with highs of 24, and it's going to be sunny in Mombasa at 26 today with highs of 33, and we'll see highs of 33 in a mostly sunny Malindi at 26. It's 19 and cloudy in Kisumu with rain beckoning, highs of 29, and it's partly cloudy at 17 in Kakamega, going to highs of 27. We're looking into a clear Kampala at 20 with highs of 27, while Dar es Salaam is sunny at 26. It's 13 and cloudy in Johannesburg with partly sunny conditions at 26 in Mogadishu, 16 and cloudy in Addis Ababa, and partly cloudy conditions at 28 in Lagos, and it's a rainy morning in Kinshasa at 24.
Spice FM. Spice up your life.
Traffic updates brought to you by M-Pesa. Calling all rugby enthusiasts. We're on the hunt for girls and young women who are passionate about rugby and ready to bring the best cheer to the global cheer squad for Kenya Sevens. Show your love for the sport by sharing your most spirited cheer videos on social media, tagging SpiceFM and using hashtag M-Pesa behind every moment.
It is starting to build on the thicker superhighway. There's inbound traffic coming in from that Allsops junction, and we'll actually look at it coming in from the Roiro interchange, making its way through towards Githurai and then out towards Kasarani and then onto Garden City. So it's going to be busy on the thicker superhighways that already started, and there is traffic on Kiambu Road as well. As you're coming in then on Gong Road, we're seeing some traffic coming in from Naivasha Road, then spilling over to Ngong Road. But then I think as we come in through Kabete, Lure, then into Spring Valley, some traffic starting to build here as well. Ombaso Road is looking good. We're not having a problem here at all. On the Eastern Bypass, we will see that traffic build up. Kangunda Road is also busy as it touches on Outer Ring and goes in the other direction as well towards Njiro. So it's a busy Monday morning and it's raining as well. So folks are going to slow down. We know this. We're going to keep an eye on all of it and try to keep things moving this morning. Let's talk it through. SpiceFM KE on X, hashtag The Situation Room.
Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
Okay, so here we are, 23 minutes to 7 o'clock, and looking at some of these stories this morning. And this story, Kenya fights to save woman from execution. There's been a lot, but let's look through the details of the story so that we know what we're talking about, right? As the sun rises in Vietnam today, Margaret and Duta Masharia's fate hangs in the balance. The subheads: Duta was arrested in 2023 at a Vietnamese airport and accused of trafficking drugs. And the very latest, Foreign Affairs PS Courier Singoe says Kenya had asked for a stay of execution. The 37-year-old Kenyan sentenced to death for drug trafficking has spent the past few hours in what is on uncertainty, whether waiting for her execution or holding on to the slim hope that diplomatic efforts will secure her a last-minute reprieve. For days, leaders, family members and activists have waged a desperate battle to halt her execution, even urging President William Ruto to directly intervene. Diplomatic calls and emotional public appeals have all played out as the countdown to her execution reaches its final hours. Duta, a resident of Kiharu, Murang'a County, was sentenced to death in Vietnam after she was arrested in July 2023 in Ho Chi Minh City Airport with more than 2 kilograms of cocaine hidden in a suitcase. She claimed that she was unaware of the drugs, having been handed the bag by her agent. Red flag number 1. With execution imminent, Kenyan officials have been scrambling to make contact with Vietnamese authorities amid intense public pleas and pressure. Foreign Affairs Principal Secretary Courier Singoe confirmed that Kenya had engaged Vietnam on the case, asking for a stay of execution. And I quote what he posted on X: had a telephone conversation this afternoon with my counterpart, H.E. Nguyen My Hang, Deputy Minister for Foreign Affairs of Vietnam, over the matter of Margaret and Duta. Her Excellency, rather. I conveyed to Madam Hang the anxiety of the Kenyan people of the impending execution of our national and reiterated our request for a stay of execution to allow our two countries to find a path towards resolving the issue. I'm grateful for Madam Hang's assurance that our petition is under consideration by her country's authorities. Now, he added that Kenya's diplomatic mission in Bangkok, which oversees Vietnam, was actively following up the case. Senior counsel Charles Kanjama, however, argues that Kenya has no legal entitlement to forced repatriation. The only way is diplomatic persuasion. In diplomatic practice, you can place a request for your national arrested in a foreign country to be tried back in your country, but there's no international law that compels any country to repatriate a convicted criminal. Therefore, Kenya can only explore diplomatic channels purely. City lawyer Matthew Okoh agrees with Kanjama. Diplomatically, Kenya can put a request before Vietnam on 2 grounds: that the person can get a fair hearing back home, and also on grounds purely anchored in maintaining diplomatic relations between the 2 countries. So, I mean, it goes on and on, but essentially that's where we are. I mean, of course, on and on, giving information and details as to what is happening here. So this is an event that took place 2 years ago, right? And the details, I mean, it's like 101 of travel. If truly she didn't know what was happening, it's 101 of travel. You never, ever, and ever and ever and ever, even in the next life ever, take a bag from somebody else to pack your things. You just don't do it. You don't take anything on travel from anybody else because you do not know where it's coming from.
Even if somebody comes to your house and they know you're traveling and they give you a bag, tell them you want it opened.
And everything to be opened.
Then you pack it. So when you're asked, did you pack this? You can say yes, I did.
You know, you don't even take a mobile phone that has been brought or say, please give this to my cousin in Nairobi. You never do. So
not anymore.
Not anymore. I mean, in the first years of flying, maybe, but not anymore. And so, I mean, this is the case that she put forward, that the agent, so she was going to work, you know how, you know, the work program, and that the agent who had connected her family with the work now gave her the bag and said, use this bag because that one that you have is small. So she packed her things and they, of course, flew via Addis Ababa. She got the bag in Addis. So then, of course, that should have been red flag number 2.
She wouldn't know. Had she traveled before?
Yes,
no.
Yeah.
Even people who've traveled before, there's a trust factor. You feel, I know so-and-so, and they've asked me to do this. It seems like a small thing.
Yeah.
Do not.
Don't.
Even if it's somebody you know. Do not.
Don't. The circumstances under which things can change are like that, or that somebody is asked to bring can change. And Vietnam, I mean, to their credit, they don't play with it because they're looking at it from a point of view of the danger that drugs are posing to their population.
Yes. They don't joke with it.
They don't joke with it at all. And they're very clear. They said whether you're a Vietnamese national, whether you're a foreign national, the same rule applies. So here, can you force them to repatriate her? You cannot. Can you seek diplomatic relations whereby we're saying, okay, guys, let's have this let's have a bilateral thing here? Can you do that? Yeah, but you know, I'm sorry, but it's pretty late in the game.
Yeah, because
it's the night before.
Yeah, because I'm also looking at 2023. Anyone would hope that these conversations, diplomatic channels, would have started back in 2023. You know,
absolutely.
Yeah. Because as we speak today, we're talking about hours. What exactly can you do?
But again, when was it highlighted? Because if it wasn't highlighted, we wouldn't have known about it.
Yes.
Let me just read for the countries that have a death sentence should you be found dealing in drugs. China, Iran, Malaysia, Philippines, Saudi Arabia, Singapore, UAE, Vietnam. They find you.
No question.
Yeah, because I saw the mother was the mother had actually gotten to a point where she was like, I just want to see my daughter before the execution. You know, and we see leaders here calling on the president to take charge, perhaps talk to the leader from the other country. But again, I was talking to one of more of a diplomat, and he was saying it is really difficult because the laws of the country apply. Number 2, in terms of interest, what does Vietnam need from Kenya and all that? Then again, the time factor. These are conversations that should have started way back.
What happened to that Kenyan in the Middle East who had been accused of killing his friend?
Yeah, who was supposed to have to see if the wife was going to allow for the bloodlet to take place. Yes. That one, right?
Essentially, so that they could pay instead of
an execution.
It went quiet.
It went quiet. So one would assume that. Well, actually, we should find out what happened. His name was George. Yeah.
Because I think there was, what do you call it, fundraising that was going on.
Yeah, but the amount, it was 150 million shillings, and by the time it was 2 months too, they were at 7 million.
Yeah.
So it was very, very far from what was required.
There's another one as well. You remember, I think it was Dalmas Otieno's son or something back in the days as well was in such. Yeah, as well. I think it was in China, if I'm not wrong.
But see, this is the thing. CT, by virtue of the fact that you have those countries, essentially you can find them on speed dial. This is what two things take into place for any nation. Yeah. That you have an entire Ministry of Foreign Affairs, you have diplomats, you have people who are versed in these things, you have legal minds, you have lawyers. You know the countries where this is going to happen. This story didn't break in 2025.
Yes. When
she was arrested, there's articles about this. When she was arrested, it was news in 2023. It is not news today that this is Vietnam's policy when it comes to the arrest of a foreign national, especially drugs. It's been there.
Yes.
So one would imagine that if your national of any nation is arrested in Vietnam, you know that this is what is going to happen. If you were interested in, number one, repatriation, number two, engaging in diplomatic relations or seeking any kind of reprieve, those discussions should have happened during the trial. Yes. Because the trial has taken place. They didn't just say, arrested you today, found you guilty or dying. No. It's been 2 years.
The matter went to court.
It did.
And that is where the defense should have come in.
Yeah. Absolutely.
That's where the negotiations should have come in.
Yeah.
Not a day before. Not a phone conversation like, hi, can we meet for coffee tomorrow? No. And I'm not downplaying any efforts by anybody or downplaying the status of Mofa. I'm just saying that it's a little bit too late in the game. It's not like we're negotiating for, please, can I pay school fees on Wednesday instead of...
Let me downplay.
Okay, go ahead.
Look, if indeed our foreign service were up to the task that is their mandate, this is something that should have been given center stage. It isn't as though every other day there's a Kenyan facing death abroad. It's not
an everyday occurrence.
No, it isn't. Once in a very long while. The intervention should have come earlier. Now, if indeed there was intervention earlier, then we need to be told about it so that we know.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And then, even as you talk about it, I mean, the MOFA should have taken steps to even just trace the lady's journey from Nairobi, because we have CCTVs. Take her to how she left JKIA when she got to Addis Ababa. You can request for such footage to help in the defense.
It's for reasons like this that the US, by the way, came up with the Patriot Act.
Yeah.
Do you know that today it doesn't matter? An American outside of the continental USA is involved in any case, you will bring that American home. That's why they went through the whole legislation.
And they will deal with their own.
They will deal with their own at home. You will bring that American home. They will do everything they can to make sure that person comes home. That's what it is. It's part of the act. Yeah. So they are aware. It doesn't matter if you've been found in backwoods in the middle of I don't know where. Come home. Yeah. You have already made negotiations with governments. Bring them home. Let's deal with them here.
Yeah, and it's actually one of the reasons why it is said that US is out of ICC, because they say we will try our own at home.
Yeah.
Yes.
Exactly. Look, there's also, and it's an uncomfortable conversation to have. But there are very many people. If we look at social media today, there is so much sentiment about what should and should not happen, and many are saying, you need to abide by the laws of the land. Yeah. If you went there and you were doing, people are saying that she knew what she was going to do. She knew she was not going to work. Not that we can judge that. But that if there was a penalty to pay for the activities that she was involved in, then she should pay.
But then again comes in the part of the republic, the country, in taking care of its own. So that's the bigger conversation that does exist. So there is the law of Vietnam, but then again, this is a Kenyan citizen. So does it mean that the country, that the government, that we just go silent?
No.
They need to come in and do something about it.
Remember, we also have nationals of other countries who have been jailed in our country.
Yes.
Yeah.
As of last week. There's a gentleman who's been given 25 years last week, for being a kiddie fiddler, and he's going to be in jail in Kenya for 25 years. So that's happened. Yeah.
So, yeah.
Wow, this is going to be tough. We're going to hear soon, essentially, what's happening, because we're talking about hours. Vietnam is about 6 hours ahead of Kenya, 6 to 7 hours ahead of Kenya. Let's wait and see. All right, next story is...
Yeah, so let's just dive into the story of the Matatu. Killer Matatu crew jailed for life offer no lesson to rogue peers. Now, Matatu driver James Gitau and his conductor Silas Ndungu are in prison serving life sentence for killing a passenger at Allsops area on Thika Road following a scuffle over 5 shillings bus fare 21 years ago. Now, the events that led to their arrest and imprisonment for murder are similar to last week's incident where a passenger died after a conductor pushed him out of a speeding bus along the same road. Both incidents involve a bus fare top-up dispute. Now, Gitau and Ndungu was sentenced to death in 2003 by the High Court in Nairobi and have since exhausted their appeals, the last attempt being request for review of the death sentence, which was thrown out by the courts. Now, the passenger disagreed with the Matatu crew after paying 10 shillings fare. Now, here is a question of the Matatu drivers and conductors on the roads continuing to kill Kenyans simply because the fare was not enough.
No, but I'm sorry. It's absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah.
10 shillings? I don't care if it was 1,000. You're not tossing somebody out the door from a moving vehicle. Are you crazy?
But it isn't. These cases are not few, by the way.
No, they're very many.
They're very many.
Very many.
The one that struck us once was a student somewhere around Ruiru. Who was thrown out of a moving Matatu.
Yeah, it was a lady?
It was a girl, yes. She was a student at JKU, I believe, and she later died. But you have them.
We have them.
In fact, there's a case in that same story where there's this bus called Super Metro.
Super Metro, yes.
Yes, they have actually been ordered by a court to pay 420,000 as compensation for assault by Matatu crew in August 2018. Okay, and then in Kisumu, there's a case, a gentleman by the name of Roman Oduor, a Matatu conductor, he's serving 30 years jail imposed in 2018. He pushed a passenger out of a moving vehicle and the passenger died. That is the impunity that Matatus have. You think it is manifested in the way they drive and the way they cut in. That attitude is perverse.
Let's not even forget. You remember there's a time Matatu were in, I think it was Cooperative University. It was during student election and whatnot. And they went there and they utterly just broke the law because the vehicle was overloaded all the way to the roof. And during the Mahanjam, city ups and downs, people celebrating and whatnot, tried to negotiate a corner, and what happened? It just overturned.
Oh dear.
Students died. They were just crushed by that.
Oh dear.
Yeah, and it's the same thing that we see even on the roads when a new Matatu, they call them Nganya imechomoka, So people are celebrating, but what exactly are they doing? Flouting every traffic rule and law that is there. That is the case today, because even some vehicles owned by sons of prominent people in this country flouting traffic rules in broad daylight, and no one is saying anything about it.
And why? It points to something that CT says all the time, because you can get away with it.
Yes.
It's impunity because you've done it over and over again. Others have done it. They've gotten away with it. And all you need to do is probably slip a few notes into somebody's hand and they're going to look the other way.
Yeah.
And that's what has been happening. But look, when it ends in death, this value question, we talk about the value of life, it cuts across. Whether you're in a Matatu, whether you're in a boardroom, whether you're in a school or under the tree, it cuts across.
Ndu, today I was having a conversation with an ENT doctor, and we're just having a conversation, and he was like, do you know what it means when you board these Matatus with loud music? At the moment you'd say you're enjoying the music and whatnot, but look at the years to come, what exposure to such loud music would do to you. But then again, let's extrapolate it in terms of how much it will cost the government to treat you in the hospital. So we talk about a population, say 20 years to come, we have a huge population that their ears are not working. the government is forced to inject billions and billions of shillings into treating their citizenry, yet it is something that they could have avoided, because even the laws of the land talk about NEMA and noise pollution and all that is in the law. But
Absolutely.
we intentionally break these laws because we know we can get away with it.
Get away with it.
By the way, what you're saying is truer than you think. When disco first came into being in the 70s,
Disco, as in disco.
Disco, pam, 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 that disco. Loud, you could barely hear whoever was next to you. There's that generation that were disco goers with bell bottoms and afros.
Yeah.
When you get to slightly even younger than I am now, someone's,
Yeah.
Somebody's talking, you say,
Yes. Speak loudly, please. I see your mouth moving. Are you trying to say something? And the person is actually speaking very loudly. You damage your ears without realizing you're doing so.
Yes.
And you get deafer incrementally. That's what you do. Yes. But there are the psychological effects as well of very loud music.
Yes.
So people who think they're having fun should think twice.
Should think twice.
Yeah, there's a very, very heavy toll. Very, very heavy price to pay for that so-called having a good time.
But City, shouldn't the government just look at its citizens in the future and take care of them today? I mean, just make sure the law is followed, because it is the very same government using this taxpayers' money that will be having it difficult in taking care of their people in the future.
To their credit, I remember that there was a time, especially around the time of Mishuki, that they were then tasked with the responsibility of making sure this loud music business was reduced. But this is the thing, that there were folks who felt they could slip a note into the hand of the authority, and it worked. That, I could go playing my loud music because I've paid the cops.
Actually, there was a time you even required license.
Yes.
I remember when we used to do road shows.
Yes.
And you wanted, you had to get license. And you had to state what you're going to do, where you're going to do it, and how.
It still exists, City, because today...
the law hasn't gone anywhere, Dennis, I understand.
Yeah.
It's this thing we have, this malady we have with follow-up and ensuring that something that is begun is actually continued over
and
time.
Finished.
Yeah. Yes.
It's true. Okay, our time is running out, but I have to tell you this Olistapit story, right?
Oh, yes.
Made its rounds, of course, yesterday. Archbishop Jackson Olistapit, who's the Archbishop of the Anglican Church of Kenya, in his distinctive style, once again made it clear politics has no place at the pulpit. This declaration came on a day when a host of political leaders gathered at the ACK St. Stephen's Cathedral, Jogoo Road, Nairobi, to witness the consecration and enthronement of the third bishop of the Nairobi Diocese, Canon Jonathan Kabiru. However, the political leaders in attendance were given a clear instruction from the Archbishop that they were to adhere to his directive. Sapit issued a strict ruling that moving forward, no politicians would be permitted to address the congregation inside the church. Instead, they would be acknowledged by name and allowed to wave at the congregation. He declared, "I want to give a direction that from today onwards, in any Anglican church, no political leader will be given the opportunity to speak, will mention their names and they can wave." He further clarified that if politicians wish to address the congregation, they would do so outside the sanctuary. This ruling is not limited to the service held at St. Stephen's, but applies to all ACK dioceses and churches in the future. The Archbishop also addressed another issue. He emphasized that offerings in the church would no longer be announced. Giving in the Anglican church will not be announced. Just give as God directs you to give. For what we give to God, we do not need to announce to human beings. After the service, he urged the politicians who were there to focus on their actual duties as elected officials, addressing the grievances of Kenyans instead of being in campaign mode perpetually. He stressed that politicians should redirect their energies towards fulfilling their responsibilities rather than indulging in political grandstanding. Yes?
Yes.
Yes. So he basically said, guys, here it's not going to happen, and let here where I'm standing serve as an example for all the other ACK. As per ACK is concerned, this will not happen anymore. You want to give to God, and you can do it in private, even as the Bible says you should. And then we're not going to allow you use the pulpit for politics. You want to talk to congregants because you've come to ACK St. Stephen's, for example. After the service, you may do it outside. And who were those in tow? Former President, former Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua, Nairobi Governor Arthur Johnson Sakaja, former deputy vice president Kalonzo Musyoka. They had to sit like everybody else.
Ukitaka kuongea, tafadhali salamu ni ya crusade.
Exactly. And that's what it's going to look like. Man didn't mince his words, and I don't think he's scared of any kind of whatever repercussions would be. And perhaps that's what's going to bring some kind of order where we are. All right. We will look into some more discussions that we will have later on, but that's a great way to start the week, me reckon. And thank you for making it Kenya's biggest conversation this Monday. We're getting into it. It's the 17th of March. Karibuni sana. Good morning. It's 7 a.m.
Spice up your life.
Good morning, this is the Newswire. I'm Lydiah. The Archbishop of the Anglican Church in Kenya, Jackson Ole Sapit, has banned politicians from addressing the faithful in Anglican churches across the country. Speaking at St. Stephen's Anglican Church, Bishop Ole Sapit said politicians will be allowed to address the faithfuls outside the Anglican Church.
From today on henceforth, in any Anglican congregation, and I thank God my bishops are here, there will be no opportunity for any political leader to have a speech in the church. We will mention their names, they will wave their hands, and if they so wish to speak to the congregants, it will be done outside of the sanctuary. And not only today, but in all our dioceses and in all our churches.
Also, Ole Sapit said the Anglican Church will not advertise offerings in churches.
We want to declare today that giving in the Anglican Church will not be announced. Just give as God directs you to give. For what we give to God, we don't have to tell human beings what we have given him.
Now, during the service, former Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua, Wiper leader Kalonzo Musyoka, his DAP-K counterpart Eugene Wamalwa, and Nairobi Governor Johnson Sakaja were among the leaders who attended the church service. This comes at a time when politicians have been taking to the stage to address the faithful and openly donate, with some Kenyans angered by the move. Meru Deputy Governor Isaac Mutuma will be sworn in today as the county's new governor at Matatu grounds. According to a Gazette notice dated March 14th, it states that general public is invited to the swearing-in ceremony, which will start by 8:30 a.m. Meru County is set to have a new governor following the High Court's decision to uphold the impeachment of Governor Kawira Mwangaza by the Senate. In a judgment delivered on Friday, Justice Bahati Momuye ruled that petition challenging her removal did not meet the legal threshold to overturn the Senate's decision. The judge affirmed that Mwangaza was accorded a fair hearing and dismissed her plea to invalidate the Gazette notice confirming her removal.
We also expect the former governor, whom we thank so much for the work he's done for Meru, we expect then her to hand over the trampings of power to the incoming governor so that the Meru County can run even better, even with the peace and development can be seen by the people.
Tunatarajia watu in thousands. Now we are prepared. Tunawakaribisha, tuko na capacity ya kutosha ya kuwa host hapa kesho, tuko na tents za kutosha, kila kitu iko hapa ya kutosha, na security hapa iko tight hapo kesho, na kwa hivyo tunakaribisha watu wote, na hapa kutakuwa free kesho, furaha, kuimba, tuweze kuswea hii gavana wetu, tuweze.
A Nakuru-based preacher whose church was raided by members of the public 2 weeks ago amid accusations of sodomy was arrested yesterday and will today be presented in court. Prophet Peter K. of the Christ Impact Church in Ruiru was accused of sodomy in a case reported to Nakuru Police in 2022. Nakuru East Deputy Sub-County Commander Sheila Kigode confirmed that a victim reported the matter at the Central Police Station in Nakuru, and a medical examination report indicated that a physical examination of the complainant suggested blunt trauma to the anal region.
Kuna kitu ilifanyika ambaye alinipigia simu akaniuliza kama niko na tuktuk. Nikamweleza sikukuwa na tuktuk, kama naweza mtafutia ingine. sababu alikuwa anataka nipeleke washirika wake mahali panaitwa Wanyororo. Nikamuuliza sina tuktuk, unless nikutafutie nyingine. So akaniambia usinitafutie nyingine, wewe kuja tu. Kuingia kwa gari akanipea pesa, akaniambia niende ninunue pombe tukunywe kwa gari, sababu alikuwa anataka tuongee. Kunywa tu kidogo hivi nikasikia kizunguzungu, na hapo mimi nikalala, sikujisikia tena. Kitu ambacho iliniamsha ni uchungu. Kama nimelala nikasikia uchungu sana, kuamuka kuangalia naona ni huyo Peter Mbaragu anafanya kitendo hicho nyuma yangu, na nilijaribu sana ku fight back sababu nilikuwa very weak.
That's the news wire. I'm Lydiah Ubaga.
SpiceFM, Nakuru.
Traffic updates brought to you by M-Pesa.
All right, taking a look at what's happening with traffic at a few minutes after 7 o'clock this Monday morning. It's a bit slippery in these Nairobi streets, so be careful. You're going to need your fog lights at some point as well. Coming in from Limuru Road we're seeing some movement, and it's also pretty busy as you're coming off the Thika Superhighway this morning from Githurai and then getting out towards Survey. So that's pretty busy as we see it right about now. It's not too bad off Langata Road, but it's also piling. We're seeing some movement on Gong Road this morning, and it's going to be pretty busy as we get into it today. Also taking a look at what's coming out of Westlands, not too bad, but there is some traffic on the Eastern Bypass as you come in past that Ruai shopping centre area, and as you come then through towards North Airport Road, touching on traffic that's coming in from Outer Ring. That's doing the business this morning. We're going to keep an eye on all of that, like we said, and we're going to ask you to keep in touch with us on SpiceFM KE on X, hashtag The Situation Room.
Traffic updates brought to you by M-Pesa. Calling all rugby enthusiasts. We're on the hunt for girls and young women who are passionate about rugby and ready to bring the best cheer to the global cheer squad for Kenya Sevens. Show your love for the sport by sharing your most spirited cheer videos on social media, tagging SpiceFM and using hashtag M-Pesa behind every moment.
Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
A very good morning to you, and let's kick off and say good morning to our audiences on KTN as we get into it this morning. And we have been live streaming through the morning on Spice FM, on YouTube, on Facebook, and on X. And that's 7 minutes after 7 o'clock. A very good morning to you, and Karibu as you join us on this 17th day of March into the Situation Room. So this hour, there are a number of things going on, but I want you to imagine biting into your favorite foods. This is not it might not be so good, but imagine biting into your favorite foods again and again without the fear of pain. That ice cream, fantastic. The hot meal, fantastic. Imagine that. And that means you come from a place of pain, right? Well, that stone cold ice cream or that super hot coffee, just the way you like it. You don't have to imagine it anymore, because Sensodyne is here to give you the ultimate relief from tooth sensitivity. And how do we know this? Because it is the #1 recommended brand by dentists. And with the World Oral Health Day coming up, we're reminding you that a happy mouth is a happy mind. And get to this. Sensodyne is giving you 50% off on select products to keep your teeth strong. Grab your pack from any Carrefour, Naivas, Chandarana or Quickmart stores only from the 20th of March to the 23rd. So that's from the 20th to the 23rd. Grab it at 50% off of selected products. And remember that Sensodyne for tooth sensitivity relief and everyday oral health. Yes. Okay. So I just had to do that. We're having a conversation this hour, and we're going to be looking at strengthening legislative oversight for transparent leadership. That it's one of the things that has to take place if you're going to have proper leadership. And to help us out with that conversation this morning, he's already seated in the hot seat once again. Shege Maura is the Ngara MCA and the Secretary General for the County Assemblies Forum, and he's here with us this morning. Shege, good morning.
Good morning, and thank you for having me.
Karibu sana.
Asante sana.
Thank you for being here today. And some of these, when we hear such topics, we think, oh my goodness, a boardroom academic. But necessary, because now we're going to infuse into what it actually looks like on the ground. So even as we do that, CT, as you know, goes around the different countries of Africa. He's in a different country this week. He's got a proverb that he's going to share, and we're going to ask you to interpret that according to you for us. Okay, let's go.
Yes, we are in what we call the Coup Belt. The Coup Belt covers a very large area. It's a geopolitical area. West Africa, the Sahel, Central Africa. We are in the Sudan. It's called the Coup Belt because these are countries on the continent that have had very many coups. We are in the Republic of the Sudan. And most people do not know this, but since it got its independence in 1958, Sudan has had 7 coups.
Wow.
7. Now, the toll on human life and the disruption of economic activity and just the upsurge of insecurity in the country has been immense. So that even things that ordinarily one could take pride of, in that this country is moving forward. The time when it seemed to move forward was the 30 years when it was under the leadership of Omar al-Bashir. But you know how that ended. And that cycle began all over again. Most people wouldn't even know that actually on this continent, Sudan is the 3rd largest producer of gold. Yes, most people just imagine you hear the Sudan. But apart from gold, they have iron ore. Okay? They have chromite. They have industrial minerals. They have copper. They have zinc. It's actually a country that's rich in minerals. But with that turmoil, you do not see. If you look at some of the reserves that they have, you've heard of the turmoil in the Darfur area. There are lots of gold in Darfur. So, I leave it to you to figure out what it is that causes conflict on this continent, whether it's just freedom that people want or it is other things. The proverb, empty stomachs have no roots.
Empty stomachs have no roots. First, let me say that roots help you strengthen your position and get grounded. So because it doesn't have roots, and it will never fill up, it will never be grounded, it will never say enough is enough, so it keeps on coming. And from the story you've given us, it shows that with this kind of resources, it's always everyone going in looking for something out of it and never getting full.
Yep. And never getting full. Well, I mean, that's a place to start, isn't it? It's great. And, you know, the words that we use when we come to governance and when we come to leadership and when we come to, you know, nationhood, statesmen, etc., etc. Transparency is one of them. Oversight is another. Legislative is another. You know, we use them almost as though, you know, we're not placing any importance on them anymore. And without realizing just how important these things are when we talk about good governance. And here we're talking about what the role oversight plays when it comes to transparent leadership. That leaders have to be at a place whereby they say, you know what, come, look at me through and through and ensure that everything is squeaky clean. That is one of the inroads towards making sure that we actually do have transparent leadership. Let's start off with a question to you. Do you agree?
Yes, of course. Yeah, transparent leadership, as you said. Come, have a look at me and tell me what you think of me as at now, and then let's work towards making it better. And that's why at the county assemblies forum, we are, because they're all 47 county assemblies spread across the country, having one conversation which is going to be happening from today. We bring ourselves together and then call the other players within the sector to come and have a look at us and let us talk about the challenges we're having, how good or bad are we doing, and then have a conversation moving forward.
How are we doing in that regard? In terms of come have a look at me?
I think this is the third cycle of assemblies, so it's progress. There are areas that we are strong in, there are areas that we are not very strong in. I'll start like number one, in terms of coherent processes of moving the issues of oversight, in terms of how we look at the executives and how we're able to interrogate things like their public accounts and how the counties are doing, we are moving. In terms of areas like gender, we are not doing very well because it's stagnated for the last 3 terms. I'll give you a good example. Out of the 47 county assembly speakers, there's only one woman. But we made her chair, right? And then, so that is an area of concern. In terms of how we do with regards to oversight and budget spending, it's a conversation. The controller will be in one of the forums. The auditor general will also be there to give us a status, and the conversation moves from there. So from a self-assessment point of view, it's work in progress. The problem comes in when you now compare us with the National Assembly or the Senate, which has been in existence since before independence.
Yes.
There was a LegCo. So they've grown from that background to what they have today. If you look at the presidency, has been there before the days of, is it Sir Arling Baring or whatever, the governor, the state house was occupied with somebody who's running Kenya. But the county assemblies is actually a new slate that started in 2013. So after about 12 years since we started, a lot of work has gone on. If you look at the impeachments, the issues that we are grappling on have gone down. If you look at how, the travels and all those things have really been managed and stabilized as we progress.
Have they?
Yes.
Travels by whom?
Travels by the county assemblies and the when you started in 2013, 2017, so much of the stopgap measures were not in place. Now they are. How you go, it's programmed in a way that you're able to do reports and all that, and a lot of scrutiny is also done nowadays. So that area has been managed pretty much well.
Now, when you say managed, what do you mean?
Managed in the sense that if you wanted to quantify budget-wise what, for example, the trips were all about, was there value for money, what did you achieve and all that, we are moving somewhere.
Do the assembly that you belong to,
yes,
do they place a direct correlation between what it is that the county can generate in terms of revenue and what it is that they can enjoy as the take home?
Very good question. Number one, the assembly passes laws, and the bulk of the laws are supposed to be brought by the executive. And so the law that Nairobi passed, I'll give you a good example, the one for title deeds, titling. So that you, nowadays, because of the skyscrapers and all, if you're sectional title, so now you're not only given a title deed for the area the ground area. Now it's also by the plinth, and that is supposed to help the county government raise more revenue. And so we passed that. Is in the process. We are back and forthing with the executive about changes here and there. But that should be able to help them in terms of raising more revenue. In terms of enjoying, it's not about enjoying. It's about a budget that helps you be able to do your job legislatively, and number 2, oversight. So that is one area that we have, we try to ensure that they're doing well, but it's also, we are not the implementers. We pass the law, we give it to the executive, they implement. If there are gaps,
if somebody labors, if it were your own business and you made profits, businesses that do well give the employees even bonuses. It's in that context that I'm speaking. If a county assembly, which is the parliament of the county, in tandem with the executive, are able to ensure that the county expands its revenue base, expands its services to the populace and the citizens of that county, it means then that county has money. If it really does well, it means the county will be rich. So if the county is rich, there is nothing stopping the county from rewarding the people who work within the county well. I'm looking at this thing from a purely corporate perspective. And why I say this is because a lot of the travel that we speak of and the expenditure, it is not travel for travel's sake.
Yeah.
It is so that somebody can earn some money. It's as simple as that. If you look at it at the national level, it's the same story. How do I make more money? And travel seems to be an easy way out. Yet, if you have a wealthy county as well as a wealthy country, that ceases to be a problem.
Yes.
Now, we complain about what the members of parliament are paid because if you look at their pay vis-a-vis our GDP, okay, vis-a-vis the debt burden that we have, there's incongruence. That thing doesn't tally.
Yeah.
They should be earning infinitely less.
Yeah.
And I say this because when you look at the private sector where people earn lots of money and they give their shareholders dividends, you have people earning 30 million shillings a month in this country. And that is their salary. Okay, so when you look at what is possible, and yet these businesses that they do within the geographical regions of the county government and the national government. That's where all this money is raised. So how is it that doesn't then percolate to the county so that the citizens of the county can enjoy better services? Now, my question was, how do you get this to happen? Because, for instance, if you look at the revenue in Nairobi, what do we say it is, for instance? Whatever X hundreds of billions per year, whatever it is. What makes us believe that is all that we can do? What makes us believe that we can't do better?
We should. We can.
We can and we should.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And just to chime in, the on-source revenue conversation needs always to be a center, part of the discussion.
Yes, it does.
For governments, and because this, as you're saying correctly, is one that opens your ability to spend, your ability to invest more in terms of development and all that. However, it really depends on the budgeting making process that the executive
who approves that budget?
It's the assembly. It approves this. But you see, by the time it comes to the assembly, it has been looked into, done everything except the issue of the passing. Let me finish. The governor, for example, has a budget and economic council that is supposed to work and help him. He has a finance department. He has a treasury department. When you now come to the assembly, we have a budget committee of members who must not all be technocrats when it comes to issues finance. So why these kinds of conversations we are having and why it is important to strengthen the oversight part is so that the team at the assembly also is strengthened to be able to scrutinize and to be able to go toe and toe and see these budget processes, these issues that we are being asked, are they up to scratch? Are they able to defend what their projections were? And I give you a good example. 43 billion budget, of which about 21 or thereabout is supposed to be from shareable revenue, the other from on-source. But how much are we getting? We're raising about 12 point something to 13 billion. Now, of course, if you have the team from Nairobi, they will tell you it's a growth from what it was last year. But that growth is also very marginal. It's maybe a bit about 1 billion. But we have a shortfall of about 9 or 10. And so that is where the conversation should start.
Why are they talking about the growth? Why are they talking about the amounts that are collected? Why is there no conversation of what it is that is possible? Why are they talking about what it is that can be anticipated? You see, when you say this is what you raised, against what?
Against what? Against a target of what?
What's the potential? What is it that could be raised? You look at every revenue source. Has it been optimized? The answer is no, it hasn't. Why not? And if it was optimized, meaning if we cut out the theft, if we cut out the inefficiency, if we cut out all these things, how much can we actually raise? That conversation, one doesn't hear of it.
And as well, just to chime in on what City is saying, as City talks about what it is we're raising and what we've not explored as well, there is always the question of even that which we have raised, how are we spending it? How are we using it? Because then again, it is in the very same counties where we still see all these travels and as well as seminars that one would say do not add value when it comes to the day-to-day running of the county.
And let me also open up another picture at the county allocation of revenue that is passed, from the DORA, the Division of Revenue Act, that says national government gets 85, counties get 15% of the shareable revenue. Of the 15, the current one that we're having, you remember that the amounts taken to the county was about 387 billion.
Yes.
The one that goes to the county assemblies is 40. Okay, it's 740. And then now you move to then there was a problem with the mediation. You remember because of the finance bill that had a problem. Yeah. So the monies were moved from 401 to 387. So there were cuts. So these cuts, county assemblies got a cut to get now 36 of the 40. But the conversation was midway through the financial year. What am I saying? Of the 36 of the 387 is less than 10%. Yet this is the team that is your first point of check when it comes to oversight. And you're not asking for money to do other things. Can we strengthen the oversight potential of the assemblies so that it can take care of your 387?
I think you raise a very valid point. But as it stands, and you're looking at the county without it being devolved, it's a task that is next to impossible. Given the population of this particular city, the population of this county, if there's a term, the word they keep talking about boroughs and they keep talking about municipalities. If you were to manage the affairs of this county well, it has to be divided. It's a monolith. This entire county cannot be managed efficiently. It's
too big
from City Hall. It can't.
Too big.
But it's deliberately done so. The confusion that is brought about is useful. Because if, let's say, for instance, where it is that you are an elected leader, if that was part of a borough, don't you think that oversight would be much easier?
It's easier.
Yes, because you'd know exactly the same thing that we have at City Hall, all those divisions and departments would be mirrored there.
In
now,
one
surely,
place.
if it's markets, if it's car parks, if it's businesses, it would be so easy to determine what it is that happens, because the very people who are supposed to oversight and bring the order would be right there.
Because if we do talk about legislation and how these things should actually be carried out, it falls right under the ambit of the assembly. So then one would ask, then how are these decisions made? How are these issues then brought into law? What we often see is that there's a scrambling in the assembly for, the ear of the governor, for example, or that they're scrambling in the assembly for the ear of the SRC, or for the ear of the, control of budgets at the county level. That's what we often see.
Yes.
So there's a legislative assembly, a legislative summit that starts this week, right? Today, actually.
Yes.
So one would ask, even as you have this summit, to go and look over some of these matters. Pertinent issues like this, which, CT and Dennis raise at this point, do they take center stage? And if so, how then do we see that playing out into the year? Whether it's Nairobi County, whether it's Baringo County, whether it's Uasin Gishu, whatever it is, the assembly is mirrored in each and every one of these counties. So why don't we see legislative effort towards some of these things? The effort that we often see is this scrambling that we speak of. Pay us as much as a member of parliament, make sure we get the proper sitting allowances. Whereas there are issues that could actually see counties in terms of their performance go from here to here.
And as well, the fact that even as today you meet with the Auditor General and the Controller of Budget, they have come with reports against these counties. But what we often see or hear is these reports are usually trashed by people in office. We don't even see the county assemblies themselves take up the mantle and say, this is what these officers have said, and we need to dig deeper.
I will answer in two parts. Number one, the conversations are structured in, we are doing about 6 plenums, all in the key areas. Number one, we'll have universal care. Why? Because the conversation about Shisha has always been at the national level. No one is talking about the level 2, level 3s and the challenges of the Shif and Sha at the counties and in the very those basic areas. But what we've done again about it, before the summit yesterday, we call all the chairs of health to have a synchronized position on how we are going to tackle it. Again, we'll now have the controller in the afternoon and all that. So in terms of addressing the conversations from a centralized position, we are trying. And that's what the best we can be able to do, because the mandate of doing legislative business is pegged to the 47 counties without necessarily having to come together. So the challenges we'll have in County 1 vis-a-vis County 2, there is no one is supposed to, you do your, the way it's designed, you just do your own small thing at your own corner.
Yeah.
But what we're trying to do is now bring us together so that at least in your best practices, it can also be mirrored here. Now, on issues of legislation for it, we do legislate. And implementation of that legislation is where now the proof of the pudding is in its eating. As it is saying, the barrows would be easy. It was a campaign promise by the current government of Nairobi. It comes with, there is actually a C member in charge of that. Whatever laws are supposed to be brought have been brought, we've passed them. So the mandate of implementing most of these things that are happening lies actually with the executive. Now, as far as the reports of the auditor,
passed the laws that would enable
for them to actually divide Nairobi. Yes. Now it's upon them again to now use whatever we've been passing to make it operational. And remember, they're the ones with the county attorney, the equivalent of an attorney general. They are the ones with the Department of Barrows. Ours is to help you get the law passed, and then you proceed and act. Now, Dennis asked about...
You speak as though you don't have powers beyond that.
Which other powers? Our powers is to pass the law. And we've passed that law. We now oversight how good or not good.
How well it's been
implemented.
Essentially.
So you get the point. We now come again.
The point, actually.
Number one, we come in legislation, and then we come back at oversight. So, for example, we gave you money to be able to do X, right? And then after the financial year, the Auditor General brings a report on how you spent the money in doing X. And then we are oversight.
And the Auditor General essentially puts it back into your hands. Yes. And she said it she said it and, of course, gave the National Assembly as an example last week. But the Auditor General, even at the county level, puts it back into your hands. Should she find that there's a problem here, and here, she essentially says, I've given it to you to then see what you can do. So the question is, what do you do?
We do a lot.
If you find that, for example, that you have given Nairobi County 1 billion shillings, or essentially you've allowed Nairobi County to spend 1 billion shillings to set up, what do you want? What do you want? Roads?
Hospital, yes.
Okay, hospitals and markets in Nairobi. And you've given them this 1 billion shillings over the span of 18 months.
Yes.
So that at the end of 18 months, 1, 2, 3 then should have been done. The money should have been absorbed. We've been able to see this development project. Yes? At the end of 18 months, so maybe it's at the end of now 2 years, 2.5 years, the Auditor General comes back and says, County Assembly gave Nairobi County governorship 1 billion shillings to spend over 18 months. We've seen that they spent 2 billion shillings and maybe we have a shell of a market and nothing near a hospital. Yes? Auditor General says, well, my job is to report. I have come back to you and I've told you this money that you guys have given, even if you did your oversight, whatever, has not come up to scratch. I am releasing the power, or not even the power, I am making the recommendation to you to then do 1, 2, 3 based on what you have seen. We have never seen, and maybe it has happened, but we've not. Maybe it has happened, but we have not been told.
Okay.
Right?
Yes.
That somebody has been made to answer, somebody has been made to pay, somebody has been held to account over money spent for no development project achieved. So we come back to that question. When it comes to legislation, it's very important that money is lost. Our city doesn't like that money is lost. Money is taken for other things that's supposed to have been done and it's not done. we end up in this cyclical nature of over and over and over. Auditor General comes, reports, we move like that.
Let me give you a good example, because I also happen to be the chair of public accounts in Nairobi County, and it's a very good example because we are there. When we came in 2022, the reports that we had to go back to were not taken care of for like 5 or 4 years. So we had that backlog. But the most important thing is that the opinion from the Auditor General were all disclaimers. All right? So we now come and do the interrogation and all that. And we are able to move. If you look at the reports, and that's why I think this conversation needs not to end here, it needs to be occurring so that the next time I come with the actual report so that you see actually if I'm lying. If you look at Nairobi County report from the Auditor General latest, they moved from the last, it was disclaimer in 2023. In 2024, they got adverse. This time round, they got a qualified. So we are on step to unqualified. Why? Because we made measures. We have, in our reports, we've recommended and taken the reports physically to EACC, right? Others to DCI. Others we've recommended a removal. Remember when we came in, the county secretary became the first person to be on the chopping board of Public Accounts Committee by virtue of whatever the Auditor General had recommended. That is as far as county executive is concerned. There's a liquor board that collects all the money for as far as liquor is concerned. Their reports had not been done since 2016. We are now up to date. They also moved from disclaimer to now they are qualified. County Assembly, because we also oversight ourselves, again, there is that movement. What am I saying? There is an area of taking issues to EACC to move. There are others that you recommend removal, or and the gaps that we found in a place like Liquor Board. Everyone was acting. So we recommended that these positions be filled professionally. And so there's movement. The only gap that we actually have a big challenge with is that communication for us to give you, and you
exactly
guys to
what
give
is
to them,
happening.
is happening to the public, so that people can be able to see what movement is there.
Okay, let's take a break at this point, and then we'll come back and we'll delve deeper into some of these issues. Maura Shege is the MCA Ngara Ward and also the Secretary General of the County Legislative Forum, and we're having that conversation this morning and saying, okay, fine, how are we looking at oversight when it comes to transparent leadership to make sure that it's actually a thing that can be implemented? 24 minutes to 8. We'll be back after this.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your... The weather with SpiceFM.
Cloudy conditions in Nairobi at 14. We'll see highs of 26, and it's sunny at 15 in Nakuru, going to highs of 26. Sunny at 18 into Nyeri with highs of 25, while at 15 it's cloudy in Eldoret, going to highs of 24. Sunny conditions at 27 in Mombasa, and at 28 in Malindi. It's sunny as well, and mostly cloudy at 19 in Kisumu with highs of 29, while at 19 it's partly sunny in Kakamega, going to highs of 27. Sunny at 21 in Kampala with highs of 27, while at 25 it's sunny in Dar es Salaam. We'll see highs of 32. Mostly cloudy at 13 in Johannesburg, going to highs of 20, while at 28 Mogadishu is sunny. It's 16 and sunny into Addis Ababa. Partly cloudy at 28 in Lagos, with rainy conditions at 24 in Kinshasa.
Traffic updates brought to you by M-Pesa.
It is a busy morning in most parts of Nairobi today. A bit of a hold up here and there. The Eastern Bypass is at a gridlock as you come then towards North Airport Road and heading through towards that Embakasi loop. You want to find your way at some point at the Cabanas interchange, but that is very, very busy. It's also quite busy on the Thika Superhighway as you come in from Githurai through towards the Allsops Junction, which has a little bit of traffic as you come in from Outer Ring. And then on Kiambu Road, we have bumper-to-bumper traffic, and it's touching on DCI headquarters there. And as you come off of Limuru Road, there's a lot of traffic here this morning, inching its way into the city. It's doing the same on Lower Kabete going towards Spring Valley and on Waiaki Way as you approach Westlands. Take a quick look at Ngong Road, and that's not moving too badly. Bits and bobs of traffic here on Naivasha Road, and also as you get onto Ngong Road itself. Magadi Road coming in from Ongata Rongai today, very, very busy, and we'll see some bumper-to-bumper coming in from Langata Road. Beyond that from Karen as well. All right, we're into traffic hour, so that's why it's busy. We'll keep an eye on things as we go ahead. SpiceFM KE on X, hashtag The Situation Room.
Traffic updates brought to you by M-Pesa. Calling all rugby enthusiasts. We're on the hunt for girls and young women who are passionate about rugby and ready to bring the best cheer to the global cheer squad for Kenya Sevens. Show your love for the sport by sharing your most spirited cheer videos on social media, tagging SpiceFM and using hashtag M-Pesa behind every moment.
Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
Shegemora is the MCA for Ngara Ward as well as the Secretary General of the County Assemblies Forum. And in the hot seat with us this morning at 20 minutes to 8 o'clock, we're having a conversation about strengthening legislative oversight for transparent leadership. Is transparent leadership, can you equate that to putting information out in the public?
Yes. Yes, to some extent and a large extent, because it's hard to evaluate somebody if you do not have the information. Yeah.
So why isn't that done often? If transparent leadership is the end goal, to say that, look, we need to be sure that everything that we do is out in the open, money spent, decisions made, challenges, crossed over, etc. Why don't we have that as often? It looks like a lot of government and a lot of legislative issues is where information and communication goes to die. Why doesn't it come out in the open? Or do you feel that it's not, important to share?
We actually would want to share even more, but the problem is that there's like a systemic dysfunctional system that makes the county assemblies unable to move because of the the constraints they have in terms of their operations. I give you a good example. For assemblies to access money, of course it's released by the controller of budget, but she must get an okay from the CEC Finance, who is an executive and appointee.
CEC Finance in the county?
Yes, who is an appointee of the governor. And so if and that's by law. So now here you are oversighting Governor X, but again you still need Governor X to access your salaries, to access your operational money for operations and oversight. So if you come too much, uskume sana, then they hamper you. Like now, there are counties that maybe even January, the salaries for January have not been paid. You get. So what are they left to do? Whether they'll go and do overdrafts and all that, just to make sure things are a bit quiet. But in terms of operationalizing the funding for assemblies to be purely independent, so that they can exercise their oversight mandate fully, is hampered. And that we pushed the last discussion with the president. There is a law, Senator Kathuri from Meru, who sponsored that particular bill. It is still in Senate, and because it's a money bill, it has again to go to National Assembly. And if it goes to National Assembly and then they have their fights of mediation, again we'll be stuck. But you get the point. So. Sometimes it's that systemic dysfunctionality that has been created by law to make things a bit jam when it comes to us being able to give what's happening at the county from an oversight point of view.
Now, we talk about oversight and the counties are making sure that it is done. But oversight goes beyond just looking at books of accounts, right? So here we are talking about the fact that there is a law that was brought to you by the county, by the governor, and you have passed that law and returned it to him. All that is pending is the implementation of this law. is it not oversight in querying why the implementation is not taking place? That, as well as I'm just going through your website, the Hansard department.
Yes.
Finally, at least I know you have a Hansard report, and all I'm seeing on the Hansard report is not everything that happened during that house. We are seeing members of parliament as well, members of the county assembly, not in the house. We have to ring bells for 10 minutes for you to be there. So in terms of even you members yourselves checking yourselves out and making sure that you do the right job, feels as though you're running short of your responsibilities.
We are not running short, but let me start from the first one of implementation. Actually, we even have an implementation committee that's supposed to oversight the reports that were passed to the assembly. How come we are slacking or whatever? And so again, the capacity, the secretariats that run the assemblies, forget about us who are elected, and Kenyans can elect whoever they want depending on the choice they had at that time. The more important team is to have the back end that are taking things to move and preparing the reports and all those kind of things. There's a lot of slack in there. And so what happens? We are slack, and there is nothing that prompts. You see, at public accounts, you are prompted because you have to act to these reports within 90 days. There's nothing that prompts you that you have to push this implementation by X number of days. So it now depends on the capacity of the chair, the capacity of the team that is there to move things. Now, back to the plenary issue. In their wisdom, the Salaries and Remuneration Commission removed the plenary sitting allowances, right? And it's good. It's good that we now just work with the basic salary. But then again, even as you are trying to save, you're also hampering the operations that were making sittings like plenary.
Why would I pay you to do your job? Why would I pay you sitting allowance to come do your job?
Look at it this way.
It's a fair question that every Kenyan asks.
I want to explain it this way. The way the pay structure is for an elected member, you have a small amount that is basic. You have another component that is pegged at committee sittings, right? Be they plenary, be they sectoral, departmental kind of committees. Okay, so before there was split between the committee sittings and the plenary sittings. So if you're saying why should you be paid, why are they also paying the committee sittings? You get the point. So,
I'm also asking why.
Yeah, why? So then just be paid the same way. Your pay structure has a basic allowance. I don't know, traveling, all those things. That is how it was. That is how it was structured. It used to help in terms of ensuring that there is
you're encouraged to come to work.
Maybe not. You will even now. Even now I'm working. Yeah, because my role is not just legislative. Actually, there is a legislative, there is representation and oversight. The bulk of the work is representation, because representation is what I'm doing in Ngara, is what I do when there's a fire and I'm called and have to make sure I rally, whatever. And that is the bigger part. The oversight part comes after, because you're now looking at the things that you legislated for, is the executive being able to implement it properly. The legislative bit is what even Kenyans do not really appreciate very well, because here is what the laws, where the laws are made. Now, whatever number of laws myself have also even introduced to the assembly, when I now go, it can't be a talking point that I pass this law to Mwananchi.
Yeah.
Them, they are interested in the representational bit. This road is not working, this light is not working, garbage here is not collected. Those are the issues.
Okay.
And you have to be with the same breath, come now and do legislative. Legislative is not done individually. Yes, you can bring the law, but for it to be passed, you need the whole house sitting. Now, you have a few guys coming, the others feel, let me use the bulk of the time representational, because at the end of the day, that's what Kenyans feel, that I'm doing good or not. The oversight bit is here and there, because it depends with the expenditures, it depends with how well you understand the reports. So the weakest link and the ones that get unfortunately, deprioritized, becomes legislative. And that's where the problem is. So it's not about being paid to work, no. It's just about how do you prioritize. Because at any given time, you're either oversighting, you're either legislating, or you're either representing. And the bulk of the work is representing.
Okay, and I think that once you see that there are different parts of a moving vehicle, right? Everybody needs to pull their weight. That unfortunately, the cyclical regression that we see contributes to the underdevelopment of a whole nation. It doesn't really matter where you are. How many wards are there in Nairobi?
85.
So I'm imagining a situation whereby each ward representative, for example, was doing the three things that you insisted on today and doing it to the maximum. Not just, I don't feel like it on a Tuesday, but to the maximum as was required of oversight, of legislation, and of representation. That those things were happening. You need the lights on here, we need the garbage picked up, we need, this road. Wouldn't it be a fantastic county? We're not even talking about the intervention or the extra added work of the governor's office. That every single ward, right, with the funds that were supposed to be channeled to the ward, with the person who sits at the position of representation, the person then who makes sure that any monies that were supposed to come in here have actually gone to do what they were meant to do. I don't think we would be having a problem that we are seeing today.
We would be happy.
There's a big responsibility then on the shoulders of because they're levels, right? And the MCA is the basic level of representation at the county level. So if everybody was pulling their weight, we would not be having some of the problems that we're having. There's no reason why there are wards in Nairobi that should be inundated by garbage. There's no reason why we should have wards in Nairobi that their roads are in a shambles. No reason why markets should be. Do you see where I am going? There's a responsibility that lies at that level that it either starts to build and goes up. Development in the development circles, they'll say you start at the basic level and then it begins to rise. And that's what the expectation is. So we dare say that perhaps at that legislative forum that you start off today, there's some hard conversations that need to be had.
And they're very good. That's why we're having this conversation, and that's why we wanted to be here to open up your audience also to follow through the discussions there and ask these hard questions. But let me say this, with the same breath, the way people get elected, you have no control over. They're going to get the guys whose heads are focused on getting the three things done to perfection. Unfortunately, there are wimps or people who feel we like this guy now, or he's in the party I like, and all those kinds of things, and all these things come to play. Now, it's when Mwananchi gets after 2 or 3 years and realize, I think we made the choice again. Now we have to go back again, and then maybe the second choice is not yet again up to. But they also, you see, it's a 5-year term. So there is that element of the civic education to Mwananchi, so that from the onset they put people of a certain caliber and a certain grade and a certain type of urgency to do work there. Number 2, this pushing for garbage to be collected, this pushing for the roads is not the MCA implementing.
No, it's not.
It's the executive. So now you push the executive, and then I give you a practical example. I call the chief engineer roads in Nairobi. I have this kind of potholes in my area. Can I see? And then I'm told that the casuals that had started work when they're doing CBD, because you don't have money, we've laid them off for a while. So now, to what extent can I? And then, of course, guys asking, this pothole, really? Just outside the Steamer Plaza? You are not seeing it. I see it. I take my kids through that road. So I want it fixed badly as everyone else. But then again, I'm also hampered because I'm not the one implementing. So when the person you're implementing that says we don't have cash, we don't be able to do this like that. So that whole cycle needs to be corrected.
Is it true? Is that reason that's often given that we don't have money? Is it true?
And it's not even in Nairobi only.
Is it true?
Yes, because again,
there is no money.
It's not that there are 2 ways. Number 1, the prioritization of that money is a problem. And then number 2, also at the national level to the counties, the shareable revenue takes a while. They're not given the money at the right time.
You see,
so the issue about money is just not one channel. It's you look at it, you have to look at all the other variables and then be able to agree who is the person who's getting the biggest blame.
You see, Chege, when you talk about representation, you talk about those who put you into office, right? Now, here we talk about a city that is supposed to work and function well.
Yes.
And the county does not work in isolation from the Constitution of the Republic. So here we have laws that talk about matters to do with, say, environment and whatnot, noise pollution. You find that it is the same county that is giving licenses to clubs to operate in residential places. And one begs to ask, at what point then does your assembly sit down and say, this goes against the law of the land, goes against our responsibility to represent, hence better needs to be done by the people? Because it can't be that the county is giving out licenses to go damage and harm the citizenry.
You see, at that point, the license has already been given.
Against the law.
Yeah, against the law. So when you are now coming to complain, you are talking about somebody who's been given the right for the next 365 days to operate. And so it becomes, there's a litigation, all those things. So the problem started from the onset, at the issuing, and the guidelines are there for you to be able. And by the way, there is even a local committee that must pass. That
who sits on that committee?
Locals.
Just
team from the locals, a team from county executive. Right, the liquor office and all that, and then there should be, and by the way, even the OCS has a position in that thing, and so there's that team, and then you ask, they bring the reports, and you see, everyone signed in like. Now, to what extent are you supposed to?
After they've signed. After, because I'm sure the regulations, you are told this is what you must do. If you have music, this is how you must go about playing it. All those things are there. The complaint comes about when those are not followed. And so there's noise pollution. People say, but all this noise.
There comes in then the enforcement part.
Precisely.
So who's supposed to come back and now ensure that compliance is done?
But you see, you're calling the OCS who sits in the committee who approved it.
That's the thing. So
you see, then the approval process may even just follow the letter of the law.
Yeah.
The problem usually is the implementation part of it. Because more and more, we have businesses within estates that didn't exist before. And not all businesses are complained about.
True.
Some are actually welcomed. Some people find no problem with.
And let me add something, because I had a meeting with the guys who bar owners. There's also another problem. The ones that are licensed and the others who are not licensed and selling illicits and still operating. So their problem is not even, there's a team that is okay with the compliance, but actually in terms of the ones who are licensed distributors and the ones who are selling alcohol within a specific area are actually not as many as the ones who are selling illicits.
But there are those who are also legally in business but breaking the other laws, like say environment, because it's the county who gave them licenses.
And I think this conversation needs, first of all, to continue. And then number two, more emphasis and more light need to be shed to the operations of the executive. Because the executive is the one that has the power to implement and the power to enforce. We come in as an oversight that this was not done well. But to that extent, I can pass, we remove that person. And there is a process that goes through that, and of course it's a political process that maybe gets to a point when you're told, this guy comes from my tribe, all those things comes into play, and making a law, somebody says, is not a very good process if you look at, because all these things come into play.
What can we expect over this next couple of days as you have this legislative forum? What can we expect for people to really buckle down and bring out the issues that are very, that are actual priorities to see counties move from here to here? Because it seems we've been doing this instead of this.
First of all, I would wish that people get to understand what happens from the conversations and what are the processes that are being made in terms of unlocking and unbundling the those barriers that we feel are the ones that are making us not make a few progress steps ahead. The others that are these are considerable steps that have been made in certain areas, the areas that we are lagging behind. So that conversation needs to, first of all, acknowledge that in the space of devolution, they are also county assemblies. The notion has always been we are all under executive, which we are not. We have assemblies, we have legislatures at the county level. What is their role? What is their voice when it comes to issues like the national issues like SHIF and SHA? When it comes to budgeting, when it comes to oversight, what are they doing? And then you start shedding light county to county and what is everyone doing. I give you a good example. For you to run public accounts, you must be the minorities. Now, most of the counties are one-sided. You go to Homa Bay, everyone is ODM, maybe one or two sneaked through as an independent or a minority. But that is the guy who becomes chairperson.
Yeah.
Now, when he brings this report, he's told, usisumbue our governor who belongs to our party. So even within his own committee, he's a minority. You know, if a committee of 7, if you are only 2 people who are, and that's the true nature of most of the counties, except maybe Nairobi, where we almost half and half. Yeah. Very few counties have that advantage. So we also need to grow to the point of getting independence, getting different political players in all these counties so that checks and balances can be
in
balanced.
Place. There's a lot of work to be done.
Yes.
You know, the Legislative Forum takes place this week. It's starting off today, where members of county assemblies will then be, in tow to try and, get forward. So we want to thank you so much for being here. And, we can't let you go without Kamara, who tells you that your haircut is actually quite splendid. Your barber is very nice, as it were. Shagamora is the MCA Mgara Award and the Secretary General of the County Assemblies Forum has been our guest this hour. Thanks for being here. A lot of work to be done. We look forward to you coming back to tell us progress.
Thank you.
Good morning and thank you for being here. We're coming into the next conversation that we will have in a short while. Good morning, 8 a.m.
Spice up your life.
Good morning, this is the News Wire. I'm Leah Ubaga. The Nairobi City County Government has announced the temporary closure of City Hall Way from the City Hall Way roundabout to Parliament roundabout to facilitate preparations for the upcoming WRC Safari Rally opening ceremony. The closure will take effect from today at 8 p.m. and will remain in place until Thursday at 3 p.m. During this period, the road will be inaccessible to motorists as rally organizers set up the highly anticipated event. Motorists have been advised to plan their routes to avoid inconvenience. Busia Branch Kupet Secretary General Moffat Okisai claims that all the government. Speaking at an education event in the county, Okisai claims that the government must pay the debt to enable schools to contribute providing quality education to students.
As we are seated here, the sovereign government of Kenya owes the schools 64 billion money that they are threatening to write off. And as a union, we are telling the government, dawa ya deni ni kulipa. So tunasihi serikali yetu kuu, all the monies they are owing schools totaling to 64 billion. Hata mungekuwa mnakaa jinsi ambavyo mnakaa, mungekuwa mnakaa kwa viti kama serikali ingekuwa imelipa the 64 billion. So don't blame anybody in Busia for having not provided chairs. Serikali haijatupatia 64 billion. Na hiyo maneno mnajua.
After losing her position as Deputy Chairperson of the National Assembly Budget Committee, Tessa South MP Miriam Marse is now criticizing the partnership between President William Ruto and ODM leader Raila Odinga. Marse laments that every 5 years, Kenyans come to the polls to elect their leaders, only for the leaders to decide to form a coalition government after a series of riots that have left some Kenyans dead. Marse, who is a UDA MP, Fathers say laments of how politicians who fought for the government are now being ousted and their position being taken up by opposition leaders.
Hii kura inakuja 2027. Tuache kudanganyana. Si wakubwa wetu wakae chini. William Samoei Ruto, Raila Amolo Odinga, Kalonzo Musyoka, Eugene Wamalwa, all of them, Rigiji, si wakae wagawanye nafasi hizo kubwa za juu zote. Watu wagawanye na tumwambie wananchi Rais ni William Samoei Ruto, Prime Minister ni so and so. Namna hiyo tugawanye hizo nafasi zote, tugawanye. Tukishagawanya tumwambie wa Kenya tuende kura. Na hiyo kura sasa competition ni kwa kiti ya governor. Kinyang'anyiro ni kwa kiti ya women rep. Kinyang'anyiro ni kwa kiti ya mbunge na MCA. Tumalize, tutengeneze serikali, tuendelee mbele. Tuachane na hivi vitu broad based nusu mkate, suji national unity, hiyo vitu haitusaidii.
Now police in Migori County have arrested a middle-aged woman accused of burning her husband with hot water before attacking him with a panga at Kadar Posi village in Uriri, North Kanyamkongo area. Chief Sylvans Obiti said Evans Odhiambo was attacked by his wife Emily Otieno on Saturday night at around 9 p.m, leaving him with serious burn and cut injuries. Obiti said the suspect poured hot water on her husband before she picked up panga and cut him severely on the head and other parts of the body. And in the international scene, US President Donald Trump and his Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin will speak in coming days as talks continue over a possible ceasefire in the 3-year war in Ukraine. US envoy Steve Witkoff, who met with Putin on Thursday in Moscow, told CNN that he expected that there will be a call with both presidents this week. Last week, the US and Ukraine agreed to propose a 30-day ceasefire to Russia. While Putin said that he supported a ceasefire, he also set out a list of tough conditions for achieving peace. That's the Newswire. I'm Leah Ubaga.
.5 Spice FM, Kisumu.
If we just gloss over issues and hope that time heals, then we might find that in generations to come, we might be back at the same situation. And the whole thing is born of stolen elections.
Spice.
When it comes to the decisions you make, you must be independent. There's no way you can allow one institution to dictate to you how you're going to conduct your operations, how you're going to decide cases. It's a no.
When you weaken the institution to the point where they cannot take action, then you realize that politicians have to come up and now start dealing with the issues.
That conversation has to die. Our politicians do not like the hard stuff. We must insist on the path of doing things right, whether popular or unpopular.
Money changes hands. That is a fact. If you have political goodwill at the highest top, like in Rwanda, then corruption will be an issue of the past. If you don't have political goodwill at the top, we will pass laws, we will amend laws, we will continue passing laws and re-amending laws, and nothing will happen.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
Traffic updates brought to you by M-Pesa.
Getting into Monday morning and keeping an eye on what's happening with traffic. Quite some coming in on Magadi Road, coming in all the way from Rongai. And you find some traffic then on Langata Road that's coming in from Karen and then finding its way through towards Uhuru Gardens. So that's pretty busy there as you then get onto Nyayo Stadium Roundabout and onto Aerodrome. All of that very busy. Look at Uhuru Highway coming in from the Nyayo Stadium. And also before that, there's traffic well behind and it's coming in from around Next Gen. That has already started to pile up. It's busy on Jogo Road going towards Landis, and we're seeing quite some traffic coming off of Outer Ring, finding its way then towards Manyanja Road. All right, the Thika Superhighway, my goodness, quite a lot of traffic here. It's coming in all the way from Githurai, actually in from the railroad interchange, and finding its way through to Survey. Bumper to bumper this morning, folks. We're going to have to get through this one. Plus, the roads are slippery, so folks are going a little bit slower than they normally would. Also, just traffic coming in from Westlands to the CBD this morning. We are in traffic hour proper, so we're keeping an eye on things and see how they move this morning. Let's talk SpiceFM, KE on X, hashtag the Situation Room.
Traffic updates brought to you by M-Pesa. Calling all rugby enthusiasts. We're on the hunt for girls and young women who are passionate about rugby and ready to bring the best cheer to the global cheer squad for Kenya Sevens. Show your love for the sport by sharing your most spirited cheer videos on social media, tagging SpiceFM and using hashtag M-Pesa behind every moment.
Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
Good morning. At 8 minutes after 8 o'clock into the second hour, rather the third hour of Kenya's biggest conversation this morning, and looking at a number of things that we'll be talking about today. And as we get into it, reminding ourselves over a number of things this morning, shan't we? That you can have the brightest smile, but sometimes you're going to have to deal with the pain. Now, I want you to imagine something. Imagine having to bite into your favorite foods and not having the pain. So imagine that stone cold ice cream or that super hot coffee, just the way you like it. You don't have to imagine it anymore, because Sensodyne is here to give you the ultimate relief from tooth sensitivity. And how do we know that? Well, because it's the number one recommended by dentists. It's the number one brand recommended by dentists. And with World Oral Health Day coming up, guess what? We are reminding you that a happy mouth is a happy mind. And to get that, Sensodyne is giving you 50% off of certain products. All you need to do is go to any one of your outlets, Chandarana, Carrefour, Naivas, and Quickmart. And there you can find, between the 20th and the 23rd of March, you'll find 50% off of certain Sensodyne products. And you want to get those in time for tooth sensitivity relief and everyday oral health. All right, we're lighting up the nation, essentially. And that's the work of the Kenya Power and Lighting Company. And the managing director and CEO of KPLC is with us again in the hot seat today. Dr. Engineer Joseph Siror is here as our guest. Good morning.
Good morning.
How are you doing?
I'm doing very fine, thank you.
Karibu sana.
Asante sana.
Things are lighting up.
Yes.
They are?
The country is lit.
The country is lit.
Yes.
You know, we're in an era where lit, we're in an era where what lit means today is not what lit would mean before. But actually, if we look at both meanings, it's actually probably in line, isn't it?
It is.
So the country is lit, according to the KPLC managing director and MD. And I think we should go with that. Pass the word to Asha. The country is lit. Karibu sana.
Asante.
Thank you for being here this morning. And even as we do normally, CT is going to welcome you, and you will help us, according to your interpretation, tell us what the proverb means. All right.
We are in the Republic of Sudan. Why we're in the Republic of Sudan is because we've been looking at areas on this continent that we refer to, geopolitical areas called the Coup Belt. These are countries whose existence seems to have been characterized predominantly by just the number of coups it has had. And to breathe life into what I'm saying, Sudan, since it gained independence from the Anglo-Egyptian dominance in 1958, has had 7 coups. So, yes. But when Omar al-Bashir was president, he himself enacted a coup.
Yes.
He sat in that position for 30 years. And there was some semblance of stability in the country. But thereafter, after he himself was ousted by members of the military, he himself was a military leader, it looks like Sudan has been back to factory settings. It's now turmoil after turmoil with immense suffering from the citizenry of the country. Now this is my phone doing a thing.
It's calling people?
Yes, I didn't ask it to call, so I don't know why it's doing it, but there it is. The proverb: empty stomachs have no roots.
Come again, I didn't get that one.
Empty stomachs have no roots.
Stomachs have no roots?
Empty stomachs have no
empty.
Yes.
Have no roots. I think it would be signifying that there is nothing inside there.
True. And if you were to give an example, can you think of an example that would perhaps put life into this particular proverb?
Because if you say an egg has something inside.
Yes, it does.
Yeah. So which one would not? Maybe a football?
You know, you are an engineer. No, without a shadow of a doubt. Yeah, people call themselves engineers, and one wonders, you are definitely an engineer. You have looked at the mechanism, the workings of this object, and you figured, what is it that I can look at? Thank you.
Well, I think we can go with that, actually.
We will.
And we will just go with just that.
Yes.
Okay. So, I mean, usually we would do like an outlook, an overview, and say, here we are getting into how the country actually is lit. But today I'm going to start off with a comment that comes with somebody from, our audiences. And the first question that Florence has asked this morning, that MD is saying that the country is lit. But we've not had power in Kikuyu for the last 8 days. And we've gone to the Kenya Power offices, but our calls have not been answered and nobody is talking to us. And Florence, it would appear, represents the views of quite a number of people. Before we go into expansion work, let's look at maintenance work to keeping the country lit. Engineer Siror, what could possibly be happening here?
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Andrew, and thank you so much for this opportunity to speak to Kenyans. My assurance, first of all, is that actually the country is lit. And when we talk about the fact that the country is lit, there are a number of factors that we expansive network. So that, yes, it could be true that maybe one individual or the other one is affected. One has to factor in that how many others are not affected. So that, yes, if it's a resident here and the other place, not that we really want to exclude anybody, but by virtue of the network being so expansive, because you'll agree with me that really if you look at where our connectivity was a few years ago, vis-a-vis where we are right now as a nation, indeed at almost 80% penetration level, that is one of the highest in Africa. You would definitely expect that some pockets of the country may be experiencing such kind of challenges. Again, if you look at what are the causes of some of these challenges, part of it is really from the public themselves. We do have incidences where our infrastructure is vandalized. We do have incidences where possibly interfere with our infrastructure by encroaching or possibly by not even allowing our teams to clear the traces. I would possibly actually not, or rather inform the public, that if you look at the number or the percentage of our outages that are caused by trees, just our trace, it is somewhere between 60 to 70%. So that is to say then that for every 70% of the experiences that the public have no power, it is just because there was a tree somewhere, which was not, possibly because they declined to allow us. And I do remember, I don't know if it was in the last show, Andu, where I mentioned that when we started the very ambitious program of clearing the traces, recognizing the impact that it had on our customers, there were those who really resisted that. And they had reasons. They would actually tell you how possibly it appears environmentally, it counters the whole issue of caring for the environment. But our answer then, and still remains, that when you go to some forest in this country, we are really planting a lot of trees. But when it comes to our trees, if you really want to enjoy reliable power, then you must allow us to clear these trees. But I did mention, yes, allow me to complete that. That I did mention then that there are those who really resisted, but ultimately they allowed us. When they allowed us, they would call back and in shock, they would be calling to say, it's raining heavily, and whereas every other time when it rained, I would be off supply. Interestingly, the power is on. And I would ask them, did you allow us to cut the trees? And they would say, reluctantly we did. And I would respond back and say, that is the reason. So it could be, and especially when we are talking right now, when we just had some scattered rains here and there, it could just be there are some still trees on some of these traces, and we'd beg them, allow us to clear them, and also do not interfere with our infrastructure, even as we pursue the essence of having reliable power for all our customers.
But why wouldn't somebody give that explanation if I were to call Kikuyu KPLC offices, for example, and say, we've not had power for 3, 4, 5 days? If it was based on some of the things that you talk about, why wouldn't they just give an answer as to it's 1, 2, 3 and we're working on it?
Thank you so much for that question. I think I've had a number of incidences where, and really, I think the main cause of this is there is a very high dependence of power in this country. I will tell you, for one, I received a call once where somebody was saying, for 4 days, we've not had power. But when I investigated, it was just about 8 hours. And I would agree with the person. I would really agree with the person.
It feels like 4 days.
Yes, it feels like 4 days. Okay. And likewise, when people, or rather when the members of the public would call, many other times, actually, their calls are received. In fact, if you are to look at our contact center, where the number of dropped calls is actually less than 5%, I would surprise you that some of the leading institutions in this country are actually coming to benchmark with KPLC to ask, what have you guys done on your contact center? Because the number of calls we are handling and the number that we are dropping are very few. The reason why I'm bringing this about is that I've had incidences, and there are so many of them, where people would call, and, or rather they would even forward to me WhatsApp messages, and they tell me, your team is not responsive, we've called them and they are not responding. When I follow, I actually find they were given the answers. But because, again, they are so dependent on power, they would not accept that it will take a day or they need to replace a transformer. They would just write back and say they are not responsive, while really they were given an answer. It's only that they were not happy with that answer, and they were hoping that possibly by escalating to the CEO, a different answer could come out. So the whole issue could really be that they got answers, and we do have our call center, our contact center. Our contact center, like I said, there's only a drop of about 5%. And when we talk about 5%, is that out of 100 calls, possibly 5 are dropped, but the same 5 can call back, and they would actually be among those which will be received. So we have a very effective system in terms of responding. But if there are any specifics, but I do know really that the first call of point is the contact center. And the beauty of using the contact center, or *977# is that there is guarantee your call is going to be logged. And if at all there is no answer, nobody needs to tell me that something was not answered. We'd actually be able to use the system to know that this is what happened. Okay. So I would encourage the members of the public, let them use the contact center, let them use *977# and report any call, and we will be able to track and even know how long it took from the time they reported to the time the issue was resolved. Okay. And we'll be engaging on an issue now which is really based on accurate data.
Now, Bonasio, as we talk about reliable power, I've just tried using the system right now, and it has just told me that technical difficulties, my request cannot go through. And that is while you are speaking here. So there is a difficulty with the system *977# that you talk about. But that notwithstanding as well, there is an issue of the response time in terms of Kenya Power. When I call with the request, what is the standard that the company has in terms of my issue being picked up and being responded to? Because at times, like the lady has said, I would call right now, I would be responded to after a day, after 2 days, after 4 days. What is the response time, and what will you do to fix the system, because it is not working from my end?
No, thank you so much, and that is a very pertinent question. Let me put it this way, that when you look at the raft of incidences or the calls that we do receive in our contact center, they would vary in terms of magnitude and what it requires for it to be resolved from one to the other. There are those that can actually be resolved possibly by even advising the customer on what they need to do. There are those that may require somebody to, or already there could be a maintenance activity. I think you still notice that possibly, even if you look at the papers of today, there are parts of the country we are taking out because of our maintenance activities. A number of the customers are not even aware, or rather they do not read some of these newspapers or adverts, which would have informed them what could actually be happening in that area. So some of it could even be, by virtue of the maintenance activities that are happening there, the line is going to be out for the whole day. So definitely, if they call to report that, yes, I have this issue, there is already an answer that this is going to be resolved at the end of the day, by virtue of the fact that there is a maintenance activity which is going to take a day or the other one. There are those which could actually be because of overload conditions. Let me put it this way, and really informing the public that the power demand in this country is increasing. Indeed, if you look at the peak demand over the last 1 or so months, the peaks, actually about 2 months, the peaks have been hit almost 7 times. This is unprecedented. So that is to say the amount of power Kenyans are consuming is increasing. And when that happens, then what does that mean? That some of the transformers may be getting overloaded.
Okay.
And if they are getting overloaded, that is not now something that can be resolved today or tomorrow. Indeed, one of the things that what would happen is one may have to stay with that condition even as a long-term solution is actually found out. So it all depends really on the kind of challenges that are there. And I think I did mention this in the past, that for some time, especially coming towards 2023, Kenya Power had failed to undertake a number of maintenance activities. And this was not because of its own making. I did mention the issue of litigation. They would tender possibly to procure certain items that are necessary for undertaking the maintenance. And the tender wars would arise where people would take one another to court. The Kenya KPLC is blocked from progressing them. And so there was a backlog in terms of what needed to be maintained. There was a backlog on all fronts. People who had paid, they were not being connected, transformers that had been paid for. So it was almost a chaotic situation. So when we now came, and when I did come on board, and again, God really helping me, we were able to unshackle and really make progress on all fronts. But by virtue of the backlog that I then obtained, the issue was not going to be resolved overnight, by virtue of the fact that it takes even to undertake these installations or even to complete the procurement progress. But if you are to compare maybe 2 years and now, and that is really one of the key things we could mention, in terms of the progress we have made, we had made a lot of progress. But I am not saying that we have resolved everything. I want to admit that we are still closing in on some of the small gaps that are there. So it's just a question of time before we catch up on all fronts, and the quality of supply in this country is going to be a level which has never been experienced before.
You know, it's interesting. I have dialed that *977#, and I've actually managed to get through.
Exactly.
So sometimes it's just...
That East could be one of the five. Yeah, I talked about 5%.
Yes.
I didn't say 100%.
Yes, and everything that I have required, I've actually been responded to.
Okay.
Even as you're talking.
Okay.
I think systems have glitches. It is the nature of systems.
Absolutely.
And when they have glitches, sometimes I think, as you say correctly, the dependency is what now makes people ill at ease. And ill at ease because you're used to having power. So the time it isn't there, that's the anomaly. If you're used to not having power.
True.
The anomaly is when the lights come on.
Yeah.
That is true.
Something that happened at the end of 2024, which was, I considered very interesting, was the profits that Kenya Power posted. Now, I'm interested not in the profits. I'm interested in knowing, when you talk about costs being reduced and efficiencies being put in place, walk us through this, because Kenya Power for the longest time was known as a loss-making entity. So when it now starts looking up and we are being told half-year profit, you're talking about 9.97. At the end of the year, you're being told something like 30.08 billion. And you're talking billions of shillings. This is big. What exactly was done to get this turnaround? Because in my mind, it's a turnaround.
It is indeed a turnaround. And thank you so much for asking this question. There are a number of initiatives which we did as a company. Number one, like I mentioned, was that we increased the number of those who we were connecting. I think in the past, because of the challenge that had then been experienced, it was not possible to connect new customers. So we connected a number of new customers, possibly the tune of almost 400,000. On the other side, again, we revamped and worked on refurbishing the network. Again, that is a factor that had not been done for long. So when you combine all those efforts for revamping the network, that means now people are able to enjoy that power supply for longer periods. We had more customers coming on board. And another factor also that really did come in our aid was the stability of the Kenya shilling. When you talk about the generators who generate power to us, and I think it is important, I think many other times, Muga, where citizens forget that we buy this power. They really think that Kenya Power owns it. No, all the power that we sell, none of it do we generate as a company. We buy it from IPPs, we buy it from Kenyan. And when you look at the currency for buying this power, it's mainly foreign. So that is to say then, and when you look at our obligation in terms of what we need to pay for the loans and what we need to pay for this power, it's an average of $1 billion. That is if you put it on dollar terms.
Per year?
So, yes. No, per month. No. Anyway, of course, in terms of the obligations at end point, it's about 1 billion. So, of course, we are paying. We are paying this. No, it's 1 billion at every point because we are paying. But what is now, put it this way.
Okay.
We are buying this power.
Yes.
So the power that we buy and the obligations that we pay stands at almost $1 billion.
And is it made back by Kenyans then who are purchasing this power at the meter?
Yes, exactly. That's what I'm saying. You know, as time goes, they have generated more. So there is the gap that is filled by the fact that we've bought power now for this month. So there is the dollar obligation that arises from the same. And then on this other side, it's like a flowing pipe. You have the ones that you are now getting in, and there is the ones that you are paying out. So at any point, the obligations stand at almost $1 billion.
Okay.
So that now, if you look at it this way, when the dollar, maybe let me go to the year before Muga. If you looked at what the exchange rate when it closed the year June 2023, the dollar was about 140 shillings or 142 shillings.
Yes.
That is 142 shillings, Kenya shillings to the dollar. The year before, it was 118. So that is to say then, if you are just looking at our obligations on dollar terms, we owed 118 billion Kenya shillings at the beginning of the financial year. And we ended up owing 140 billion at the end of the next financial year. And that is if you are assuming even there is no payment. So that would make it appear then that your obligations have increased by 22 billion. But that 22 billion is just by virtue of the fact that the Kenya shilling has depreciated. And so that when you look even at our returns for our performance for the year that is coming to June 2023, the finance costs, that is the impact that we got from by virtue of that variation. And again, the fact there was one other aspect which we are yet to solve, but we are also believing that this is one of the hiccups that really needed to be solved for Kenya Power, is whenever again we would buy the dollars in the market to pay for these obligations, we would buy at market rate. But when it comes to regulators, sorry, I think this one was not. When it comes to the regulator allowing us to recover, we would be recovering at CBK mean rate. So that then, if you looked at the impact alone on the coming to 2023, it was 4.7 billion. So we lost 4.7 billion by virtue of the fact that we are buying dollars at one rate and are being allowed to compensate at the other one. Now, so the entire finance cost, or what that aspect of finance alone affected us, was to the tune of 24 billion. So that for that financial year, Muga, we had met operating profit of 19 billion. But the finance cost, that is the impact of this foreign currency, was 24 billion. So it wiped off all the profits that we had made and pushed us to negative 4 billion. Now, when we now come to the year 2024, the reverse happened to an extent, because we started with around 140 billion and we ended the year with around 129. So instead now of it going to the negative, it almost assisted us. But it only assisted us to the tune of 7 billion. So when you look at our gross profit, which was for the 3.6 billion, or rather 41.4 billion, and you less, out of that, 7 billion was contributed by Forex. So that is to say then that our profit, even if you just remove the finance cost, was still to the tune of that 5 billion. Okay. And this is now the one that was contributed by those other factors which I have mentioned before.
All right, let's look at the spread of making sure that lines up. I remember the last time that we were here, we looked at the western part of the nation, and one of the things you talked about was the heavy lines that had to be put up in order to ensure that power had reached certain areas. I mean, it's a few months after that. Let's find out where we are in terms of providing power. And your friends from REREC were here last week, and they said that metering sometimes is at your doorstep, KPLC, and that's why sometimes there might be a delay. So you can have a chance to answer to that as well. The Managing Director and CEO of Kenya Power Lighting Company, Dr. Joseph Sirori, is our guest this hour. We're going to take a break and come back and look at more issues power, as we remember that Kenya is indeed lit.
This is the Situation Room The only way to start your day. The weather with SpiceFM.
17 degrees and now partly sunny conditions in Nairobi. We'll see highs of 26 and highs of 26 in a sunny Nakuru at 17. It's 18 and sunny in Nyeri with mostly cloudy conditions at 16 in Eldoret, 28 and sunny in Mombasa and 28 and sunny in Malindi. 21 and partly sunny cloudy conditions in Kisumu, and at 20 it's partly sunny in Kakamega. Sunny at 22 into Kampala, while Dar es Salaam at 27 is sunny, Johannesburg 13 is sunny, and Mogadishu at 30 will be sunny through Monday. It's partly sunny at 18 in Addis Ababa with 28 and cloudy conditions in Lagos, and after the morning rain, cloudy conditions at 24 in Kinshasa.
Welcome to SpiceFM, the best exclusive radio station bringing you the best mix of the best music ever.
Traffic updates brought to you by M-Pesa.
Mature, intelligent talk every morning.
Okay, so traffic still continues. It is a busy morning. Looking around Nairobi, take a quick look at what was coming off of the Eastern Bypass earlier, and it still continues. For what we see, that there is quite some traffic as you then try to find your way into the Cabanas interchange, and as you come through Outer Ring, there is some traffic inbound, and quite a lot of that also outbound going towards the Thika Superhighway. And speaking of which, looking at Thika Road this morning, very, very busy as you then approach the CBD. So bumper to bumper action there. And coming off, let's see how keep things moving this morning. SpiceFM KE on X, hashtag the Situation Room.
Traffic updates brought to you by M-Pesa. Calling all rugby enthusiasts. We're on the hunt for girls and young women who are passionate about rugby and ready to bring the best cheer to the global cheer squad for Kenya Sevens. Show your love for the sport by sharing your most spirited cheer videos on social media, tagging SpiceFM and using hashtag M-Pesa behind every moment.
Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM.
25 minutes to 9 o'clock, and we are still in that conversation with the MD and CEO of Kenya Power and Lighting Company, and that is Dr. Joseph Siror. So, like I said, last time you were here, we talked about moving power to different parts of the country. One of the issues that you brought up was the fact that, you have to put up multiple kilometers, essentially, of lines. And that proved to be two things, an expensive affair and a laborious affair, which impacted on the power that then you're able to provide in different parts of the country. And that you're looking into ways in which to either shorten the amount of lines that you have to put up. And so the question is, where are we with that? And I think Muhoroni came in.
Tamu.
That area came in as a point of worry. And so, one of the residents at some point in the year is concerned about that.
They are referring to me.
No, I think that's a very good conversation, and it's really good to put us to task always where we note some parts of the country which have constraints. It's really upon us to ensure that we address it in whichever way we can for the citizens to enjoy this electricity supply. Yes, we do have still a challenge in Western Kenya. We call it Western Kenya, the whole region. But there are a number of interventions which I did mention at the time, and some of which are complete and some of them are in various stages. If I may just remind, I think the biggest challenge that we have in that part of the country is that we traverse a very long distance to reach them. And whenever you have a very long line serving a particular place, there are a number of constraints. To the extent that at times you might have enough power, but the challenge is the pipe is inadequate to carry all the power that the citizens require. And that has been the biggest constraint. The biggest constraint has been a line from a place called Mamboleo to Moroni, and then Moroni to a place called Chemosit. And the challenge has been that the amount of power required by the residents, because that is the line that is dependent by places like Bomet, going all the way to Nyamira, Kisii, Migori, Homa Bay, and all those areas. And they are really depending on that line, which is quite constrained. And at the time, I did mention that the solution to that, first of all, in reducing even the losses, is a shorter path, because the power from Olkaria now had been, up to that time, moving all the way, bypassing Lesos and going to a place called Kibos. And that's a distance of almost 300 kilometers. And then, of course, it could go 7 kilometers to a place called Mamboleo, come another 40, 50 to Moroni, another almost 50, 60 to Chemosit. Before now, it goes to Sotik. Then it goes to Gekati, it goes to Awendo, then it's Ndiwa, and then it applies to those areas. So what we then did, because that is a length of almost 400 or so kilometers, there's a line which is to be done by Ketraco between Narok and Bomet. But we noticed that line was going to take long. And seated at Kenya Power, I was not ready to see those people suffering for a project that might take some little time to do. So we did implement what I would call a mitigating measure by doing a 33 kV line, which is at a lower voltage, from Narok to Bomet. And in so doing then, power can move from, that is from Olkaria. It goes, of course, it now connects to Sotik and the other places. But the main or the most important thing was to reduce the load line. That is to say then that the inhabitants of Bomet can actually be supplied now from Olkaria directly via the Narok path, instead of depending on the same Mamboleo, Moroni, Chemosit. And by deloading, we call it deloading. By reducing the load on that line, that means then what has been reduced is then available downstream for the other customers. And that line was already completed, and the customers are already enjoying better quality of supply. But by virtue of the fact that it's a 33 kV line, it was only able to carry maybe about 7 or so megawatts, which is quite substantial, because if you talk about the number of homes that then benefited by virtue of that intervention, that is quite positive. The other thing that we did, Andu, is that we also shortened the path from, because like I mentioned, the line was coming all the way from Olkaria, and then it would bypass Lesos and go all the way to Kibos. Now, what we did do, we terminated one of the circuits. The line that leaves Olkaria that was built by Ketraco is a double circuit line. That means it can carry in 2 parts at the same time.
Okay.
So we terminated one of the circuits in Lesos, because between Lesos and Moroni, there is another direct link. But before, it was being bypassed. So we terminated that line as Kenya Power, and that means then some of the time, the power can actually flow directly from Olkaria, go to Lesos. Instead of going to Kibos, Mamboleo, back to Moroni, once it reaches Lesos, it can go directly to Moroni. And another intervention, which also the ministry did really intervene, was the revival of the Moroni gas turbine. We revived the gas turbine in Moroni to give a little bit of relief. But many other times it is not being used. And the reason was, when we did have this intervention, where one of the circuits we terminated in Lesos, it is possible to push power now. So the constraint that was between Moroni and Mamboleo is obviated by virtue of the fact that we now have this direct link. So those are some of the interventions, but there is another one also which we completed the other day, where we had a line from a place called Makutano going to a place called Chepseon. And the reason, again, why that contributes to the same is part of the load now from Kericho is being fed from Makutano. And that Makutano, by feeding it again from Makutano, you've reduced the load, or rather that would have been demanded from the line that goes to Chemosit. Okay. So anything that deloads Ahero, that deloads Chemosit, is actually going to address that. But the reason why we are again doing that is so that Ahero can be supplied from Kibos. Because as it were, the power was moving from Kibos, it goes to Mamboleo, and then comes to Moroni. So in so doing, it was overloading that one line. But if we can deload and supply some of the places from Kibos, then we can reduce the amount of loading of that line. So there are a number of interventions which we have done since the last time we talked. I think you must be a bit impressed that we have actually managed to do all that within this time. But yes, we have not resolved it in totality, but we have made a lot of progress.
Okay. You know what I've always wondered? Because as you're talking, every place you mentioned, I know.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm actually seeing it. Why on earth did we have that circuitous route? The power is coming from the source, it is here. It goes across to a place which, but it bypasses all these places, go to some place, then goes back to a place which is near the source, and then comes back. What was the logic behind all this then?
That's a very good question, Muga. And the main issue in a number of these things that possibly from the circuit aspect we are talking about is that we have what is called a master plan, or the least cost power development plan. In this least cost power development plan, it provides for a number of projects to be undertaken and at what point in time. So what did happen then? If you look at the Narok-Bomet line, which would have dealt with that very quickly, that was a line that was planned for way back in 2017. So according to the Least Coast Power Development Plan, that is a line that would have been constructed before 2017. But by virtue of some of these challenges of financing, a contractor comes, the other one happens this way, then it takes long. And now when it takes long, the constraints start to be experienced. Because that one was already known. It was known that by the year 2018, 2019, we would have this challenge. And what was the mitigation? A line needed to be done between Narok to Bomet, and that needed to be done by 2017. But now we are talking about 2025, and that line is not complete. So those are the issues. There are a number of projects in this country which were planned to have been completed as per the Least Coast Power Development Plan, but by virtue of certain challenges, it didn't happen. And by virtue of it now not happening, then we have those issues.
Now, Engineer, there are questions that are being asked, and we'll just start with someone has just asked from Marsabit. Why is it in 2025 they're still being supplied power using generators if you're talking about the sustainability efforts being put in place by Kenya Power? And that note aside, the biggest question in the room, Kenya Power buys power from Kengen and other players. Why are you transacting in dollars? If these people are based in the country, or even if you're doing business with Uganda or Ethiopia, why operate in dollars? Why not agree on exchange rate using Kenya shillings or Kenya shillings vis-a-vis Ugandan shillings? Why the dollar?
That is a very good question. Let me start with that last one before I go to the next one. Why do we buy this power in dollars? Indeed, this is a very good conversation we can engage Kenyans on. And the reason why I'm saying we need to engage Kenyans on, if Kenyans were willing to fund these infrastructure projects, if the pension funds, the NSSFs, and all these who have resources within the country, if they would really be willing to invest in doing the infrastructure for Kenya, then that conversation would be totally different. By virtue of the fact that their resources are in Kenya shillings. So we can have such a commitment and they can actually do the financing. The unfortunate thing is the fact that the financing for most of these projects is foreign. And by virtue of it being foreign, the payment mode and the amounts are all in foreign currency. Some are in dollars, some are in euros, and I think those are the two most common. Some could even be in Japanese yen, by virtue of who has financed it. And to make what is called financial closure, including for Kengen, once you get funding, say, from World Bank, or you get funding from the French AFD, or EIB, or EU, all of it is in foreign currency. So the financing agreement, which is then signed, is to be making payments at certain rates, which is in foreign currency terms. So for as long as the financing of these projects is in foreign currency, then the payments have to be in foreign currency. None of them will be willing to take the risk of the fluctuation that might result because of the Kenya shilling. So, and that explains why, up to now, most of them, including for Kengen, a number of them, actually most of it is in foreign currency. And the reason why it's in foreign currency is because of those debt obligations. But I think if we can rally Kenyans, and maybe the way even others rallied their citizens, to rise up and fund some of these infrastructure projects, even if it means making contributions, then of course we can have it in Kenya shilling and it will really be good. Now, coming to the issue of Marsabit, that is a very pertinent question. And the main issue, first of all, I think, let me also just give an explanation. If you look at the energy sector, we have a number of players. We have those who generate. And when you talk about the generation space, you are talking about Kengen, you are talking about the IPPs. You are talking about even REREC to an extent. They have a solar plant in Garissa. And of course, maybe again linked to the same generation is GDC. And GDC is mainly for drilling, to de-risk the issue of having to spend millions of dollars and then you find there is no steam. So that is at the generation space. After you've generated the power, then you come to transmission. When you now come to transmission, that is the place where Ketraco plays predominantly, but we do have assets as Kenya Power. But these are the old assets. But the one who is really moving and installing new transmission lines is Ketraco.
Okay.
So the biggest challenge that we have, even that you've raised, is to do with lack of transmission lines. But when you again talk about the transmission lines, what is the biggest challenge? They are quite expensive. So that means you require funding. And that explains why the government has actually been considering the issue of PPPs in terms of getting the private sector play into that particular space, so that we can then fast track the installation of the transmission lines that would answer that question about Marsabit being, still at this point in time, being supplied by diesel generators. Mm-hmm. But I think we do have projects. There is one that we actually launched recently called the Kenya Off-Grid Solar Access Project, which is more of hybrid that mixes a bit of solar, and where you have a generator, then it's not there most of the time. You would actually be running on solar, and of course it has battery storage, so it can support it even to a portion of the evening. But now when it runs out, then the generators can come in.
Okay.
So we do have interventions that actually address the same.
Rural electrification and last mile connectivity, yes. Big issues. We had a conversation about this just a couple of days ago. Where or what is the role of Kenya Power when it comes to those two, last mile connectivity, essentially to the very doorstep of everybody, and rural electrification, making sure that everybody then has access to this? There are complaints across board of people having made payments, waiting for a transformer, waiting for poles, waiting for things like that. What's the role of Kenya Power in all of this to ensure that what we are having is really that everybody who can pay for it, who's done it, can actually have access to it?
No, I think the main issue, Andu, is that, first of all, when it comes to last mile and a rural electrification project, none pays for anything. It's actually funded. It's either funded by GOK or it's funded by the donors, or rather not really donors, financial partners. So all these are funded.
Okay.
There's none who needs to pay for anything.
Apart from the 7,000 shillings that Rirek told us that needs to be...
What does happen then is there is a loan which is extended to the beneficiaries of 15 million. It's a subsidized cost.
Okay.
So these 15,000 shillings is then paid when they are paying the tokens. Whenever they pay a token, say for 100 shillings, 50 shillings goes to pay for the token and 50 shillings goes towards paying the loan. So that is actually the structure of the last mile schemes. In terms of ownership, the owners of last mile schemes is actually rare. But it does happen that the financial partners, by virtue of them wanting it to be undertaken within a short period of time and possibly harnessing on the network and capacity of Kenya Power, they would want, of course, the Ministry of Energy being the owners, they would want to implement, or the implementing agency to be Kenya Power by virtue of its capacity to implement these projects. So we do still find financial partners, or rather preferring to do quite a number of scope, harnessing on Kenya Power scope. And this would be understandable by virtue of the fact that we are across the country, we have the infrastructure, we have the machinery, and we have the systems that can actually roll out within a very quick time.
How long should it take? How long should it take, really, practically? Because again, because I can't find another place to give an example about. So I am in Muhoroni. And I'm trying to connect.
we will transfer you there. Or transport you there.
And I'm trying to have power connected to my house. And I go to the local REREC office, which I'm supposed to do. And I apply for that. They tell me it's an immediate thing. But the infrastructure, because their job is to bring power, the line is supposed to drop at my wall, right? But in order to have that line connected, I need a meter. Right? The meter is Kenya Power, right? So in terms of timing, because coming from the comments here and coming from the reality that we see, how long should it take? Because then people should be able to plan. If I've whatever I need to do, I've done. What's the lead time between my application and the lights going on in my house?
Okay, let me separate the two. If it's coming under normal application, that is, you've applied for a connection, this is now a commercial application, then of course the issue would be how ready is your building to be connected. Because many other times you would find people applying, our teams would go, there is no wiring certificate, a number of things are missing, and they would be told, oh, certain things are substandard. So we'll immediately revert back and say, we've inspected your facility, possibly we don't have a wiring certificate for us to be able to connect. Because I've dealt with a number of those issues where somebody says it has taken very long. But when I follow, I actually notice the customer himself is not ready and maybe just wants the connection to be done without some of the basic requirements. And as a company, we can never do anything that would pose any element of risk.
Okay.
We are very stringent on standards. So, but once all the things are required, it should not take. It actually should take less than 3 weeks for us to be able to connect you.
So all
now,
things being constant,
Yes.
everything in place, and
Yes.
me having done what I'm supposed to do, I should have the lights on in 21 days.
Depending again on how far the next our line is. Because what I mean to say is that it could be like you are 2 kilometers from where our next line is. So that means we still have to install a number of poles, we have to extend this and the other one. But I'm just talking about where we just need a drop cable. That is, there is a line that is passing next to you, and you are within a transformer radius. So it's just a drop cable to your house and metering. That one should not take more than 3 weeks.
Okay.
But let me come to the one that you mentioned, because I think I needed to separate the two. When it comes to those that come under REREC, that is the last mile schemes.
Yeah.
These last mile schemes must be funded. And once they are funded, I'm assuming that you are saying a last mile scheme has been undertaken either by REREC or mostly, I think the ones that we do ourselves will meet immediately. But the ones which have been done by contractors, and REREC normally uses contractors. KPLC, we can use our own teams, and we can at times use contractors. Once it has been undertaken by REREC, the process normally is they would apply for us to come and do the inspection.
Okay.
We may inspect the installation and find a lot of gaps that would actually force, or rather that would pose a risk if we just connected them the way they are. So what we'd then do, we'd actually identify them as snags. And we tell them we need these snags for them to be addressed so that we can now take over and meter.
Okay.
We do have a challenge at times in that the snags are not addressed quickly. And then you get the pressure to connect. So on one side, we want to really enforce the standards. We don't want to connect anything that does not conform to the standards of safety and the standards of installations.
Okay. All right.
So that normally at times poses the challenge
problem.
in terms of how quickly. But if they are quickly done, if everything is okay, we should be able to meter within a month.
A biting issue, sorry, Dennis, a biting issue for a lot of people right now this morning. Nairobi West, 500 shillings, and this is a practical example. 500 shillings will get you 24.1 units on a prepaid meter. In Syokimau, in certain parts, 500 shillings will get you 19.5 units on your token. Why do we have the discrepancy in that price?
I think I had almost answered it, but let me come back to that answer.
And this is across board?
Yes. If you are connected using last mile scheme, no, I think I need to deal with two things here. Let me talk about, suppose you are connected using a last mile scheme. Whenever you pay 500 shillings, half of it goes to pay for the loan.
Okay.
And half of it goes to pay for the token. But let me assume that for once, that is not the case. If that is not the case, what does happen, Andrew, is that we have tariff classes. 0 to 30 units. If your average consumption for 3 months, it's computed every 3 months, is 0 to 30 units, that is called the lifeline tariff. You enjoy a lifeline tariff of about 12 shillings before you add the levies and the taxes. If your average consumption per month is 30 to 100 units, you get a tariff, another second lifeline of 16.5. But if your consumption is above 100 units on average per month, then you pay about 22 shillings, which works to about around 30 shillings. So irrespective, if my average consumption is above 100 units, whenever I pay 500 shillings, they use now my tariff. What is my tariff class? I'm in the class of almost 30 shillings.
So you pay more?
So I would be paying, like in my house, if I paid 100, if I paid 500, and because I use on average more than 100 shillings, that one should get me less than actually about 17 units.
So if I can say it's, so if you consume less, you get more units for 500 bob. If you consume more, you get less units for 500 shillings.
Put it this way. If my lifestyle is such that I'm consuming less than 30 units, that would really be telling you this is somebody who is on the lifeline.
Okay.
Because for anybody, that means that person is only using it for bulbs.
Okay.
He's using it for nothing else.
Let me throw in the spanner.
Please do.
So here's a question where Nairobi we live in apartment buildings where people move in, people move out. Last month, City was living in Tamu, this apartment building. He was using up to 500 units. Then I move into his apartments and I am there 100
person guy, how do you deal with that discrepancy? Because then I would be using City's rate and not mine.
You've really asked a very good mathematical question, and you've asked the right person.
Oh, there you go.
What does happen? We do the average over 3 months. So that is to say, for the first 3 months, you might be lucky. Because you see, your average may enjoy the tariff that the other person was using. But the moment the 3 months hits, we will have known that your tariff class is different, and you'll be moved to the next tariff class.
So you would see the difference?
Yeah, you will actually start seeing it.
Okay. Engineer, in a minute, what are the plans, essentially? We say Kenya is lit. What are the plans over the next, if we're looking within this year, to make sure that, some of these bottlenecks that we speak of are actually smoothened out?
That is a very good question. And like I did mention at some part of the program today, we are still revamping we are still undertaking a lot of refurbishment for our network. That is why I'm almost guessing that even in today's newspaper or even our social media handles, we may be showing some areas of the country which are going to be out. And mostly, if you see 8 to 5, it's definitely an issue of maintenance. So we are undertaking a lot of maintenance activities. We are also expanding our medium voltage network. And so there's a lot of maintenance activities. And the maintenance, of course, goes to looking at the transformers, looking at the lines, clearing the traces, checking that everything is okay, checking overload conditions. So there's a lot that is actually going on in terms of refurbishing, in terms of introducing. If we notice there is a serious overload in a particular point, we look at ways to reduce the loads, and also the expansion of the grid. We are introducing some substations in some parts of the country and really expanding the network.
Maybe you can encourage your people who are at the other end of the phone when Kenyans call to just at least tell them what is happening so that they can say, okay, fine, we will wait. If they don't get an answer, it becomes difficult for folks to know when the lights will come on.
I think the main issue is that they really harness our contact center, because we do know that some call individual officers or some of the staff of Kenya Power. That is not really the best way to track it. Let them log, let them harness our contact center, and I really want to appreciate the level of efficiency that we have from our contact center. I think the team are really doing an excellent job, and I really want to laud them even from this particular platform. So let them take advantage to log all their issues, and we'll be able to get back to them in terms of when the issue is going to be resolved. But possibly for some of them, we are already aware of the challenge and we're actually addressing it. Like this past week, I think we had an issue in Kibra where a line had collapsed. And when the line collapsed, then what then happens is that we had to look for a short mitigating measure, first of all, as we were planning to restore the line, to feed them. And of course, the feeder, or rather the line that was being used in Karen, extended to supply them. And at times it was getting overloaded, and it would trip by virtue of that overload. And I really want to appreciate the people of Kibra, because when it now came to the time when we were actually undertaking the restoration, they really assisted our teams. There are places where our truck could not go, and they assisted our teams in terms of the restoration and ensuring that it was up.
Everybody working together, and it's always good to know where, Kenya Power is in terms of all of this, and looking forward to more conversations with you in the future. Engineer Dr. Joseph Siror, the CEO and Managing Director of Kenya Power and Lighting Company, has been our guest this hour. Thank you so much for being here this morning, and we look forward to more conversations with you in the future. Good morning. It's 9:01.
Spice up your life.
Good morning. This is the News Wire. I'm Leah Ubaga. 38 suspects were apprehended in connection with recent attacks targeting innocent members of the public along Thika Highway, Wairimu Way and Jogo Road will be arraigned this morning. Police officers launched a swift crackdown to hold the perpetrators accountable, leading to their arrests. During the operation, authorities recovered 7 motorcycles used in the attacks, along with several mobile phones, which have been detained as exhibits. Meanwhile, police remain vigilant and are actively pursuing additional suspects linked to this incident to ensure the safety of the public. A police officer who was shot and injured in an attack by Somali's National Intelligence and Security Agency in Mandera was flown to Nairobi for specialized treatment. Also flown was the body of Constable Dennis Omari, who was killed when the NISA gunmen struck at a border post in Mandera. This came as the NISA officials were led to the border post to revenge the arrest of a brother to one of their officers in Kenya. The gang stole 2 guns belonging to the slain officer and the injured one. The guns were, however, later handed back to Kenya with some 80 bullets missing. A Nakuru-based preacher whose church was raided by members of the public 2 weeks ago amid accusations of sodomy was arrested yesterday and will today be presented in court. Prophet Peter K. of the Christ Impact Church in Ruiru was accused of sodomy in a case reported to Nakuru police in 2022. Nakuru East Deputy Sub-County Commander Sheila Kegode confirmed that a victim reported the matter at the Central Police Station in Nakuru, and a medical examination report indicated that a physical examination of the complainant suggested blunt trauma to the anal region. Isaac Mutuma, who has served as a Deputy Governor of Meru County since 2022, will today assume governor position. This follows the impeachment of Governor Kawira Mwangaza by the Senate last year, which was upheld in a court ruling on Friday. At Mwendantu grounds, the Assumption of Office Committee toured the scene to oversee preparations for the oath taking of the 4th governor of Meru County. Meru leaders say the first biggest assignment is for Mutuma to unite Meru County, which has been rocked by unending battles since the election of Mwangaza in 2022.
We also expect the former governor, whom we thank so much for the work he's done for Meru, we expect then her to hand over the trampings of power to the incoming governor so that the Meru County can run even better, even with the peace and development can be seen by the people.
Tunatarajia watu in thousands. Now we are prepared. Tunawakaribisha, tuko na capacity ya kutosha ya kuwa host hapa kesho, tuko na tents za kutosha, kila kitu iko hapa ya kutosha, na security hapa iko tight hapo kesho, na kwa hivyo tunakaribisha watu wote, na hapa kutakuwa free kesho, furaha, kuimba, tuweze kuswaya hii gavana wetu, tuweze.
That's the news wire. I'm Lydiah Ubaga.
.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
If we just gloss over issues and hope that time heals, then we might find that in generations to come, we might be back at the same situation. And the whole thing is born of stolen elections.
Spice.
When it comes to the decisions you make, you must be independent. There's no way you can allow one institution to dictate to you how you're going to conduct your operations, how you're going to decide cases. It's a no.
When you weaken the institution to the point where they cannot take action, then you realize that politicians have to come up and now start dealing with the issues.
That conversation has to die. Our politicians do not like the hard stuff. We must insist on the path of doing things right, whether popular or unpopular.
Money changes hands. That is a fact. If you have political goodwill at the highest top, like in Rwanda, then corruption will be an issue of the past. If you don't have political goodwill at the top, we will pass laws, we will amend laws, we will continue passing laws and re-amending laws, and nothing will happen.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
Traffic updates brought to you by M-Pesa.
Okay, a few minutes after 9 o'clock, 6 minutes after 9, let's see what's happening on the roads today with traffic. A little bit of that still coming in on the Thika Superhighway, actually a lot of that. And it's very busy on Uhuru Highway as you get done with that traffic that's coming off of Mombasa Road. Uhuru Highway then between Bunyala Road and Haile Selassie Junction, that is busy. Also on Landis, as you go towards the Kamkunji roundabout, that is doing the thing. The Thika Superhighway is still with traffic. I take that back, at least between Allsops Junction and then getting towards Muranga Road. So that's busy. There's also some traffic on Waiyaki Way, and then as you come around through towards Chiromo, there is some traffic here as well as on Lower Kabete going towards Spring Valley. So that whole area very busy. James Gishore trying to cross over towards the Red Hill Link Road, not too much, so you'll be able to get through that without too much of a headache. We're still in traffic hour. Let's see how Monday morning pans out. We shall talk. SpiceFM KE on X, hashtag the Situation Room.
Traffic updates brought to you by M-Pesa. Calling all rugby enthusiasts. We're on the hunt for girls and young women who are passionate about rugby and ready to bring the best cheer to the global cheer squad for Kenya Sevens. Show your love for the sport by sharing your most spirited cheer videos on social media, tagging SpiceFM and using hashtag M-Pesa behind every moment.
Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
It is 8 minutes after 9 o'clock into the final hour of Kenya's biggest conversation this 17th of March. And getting into the morning, looking at certain things that do matter when it comes to conversations that we have. Okay, so imagine a situation where you can bite into your favorite food or have a taste of your favorite foods without the pain, or without even the fear of it. Imagine that stone cold ice cream or that hot cup of coffee, just the way you like it. You don't have to imagine it anymore though, because Sensodyne is here to give you the ultimate relief from tooth sensitivity. And how do we know that? Well, because it is the #1 recommended brand by dentists. And with One World Oral Day coming up, with World Health Oral Day coming up, we're reminding you that a happy mouth is a happy mind. And to get this, Sensodyne is giving you 50% off of select products to keep your teeth strong. Grab your pack from any Carrefour, Naivas, Chandarana or Quickmart stores only between the 20th and the 23rd of March. Sensodyne for tooth sensitivity relief and everyday oral health. All right, as we get into another conversation for this hour, we're going to be looking at the effects of the USAID withdrawal on refugee support in Kenya. And our next guest is already seated on the hot seat, and that is John Burugu, who is the Commissioner for Refugee Affairs, and he is already here with us this morning. Good morning, John.
Morning to you.
Karibu sana.
Thank you.
You're in the hot seat of the Situation Room, and we're dealing with a hot topic nonetheless. When we look at certain things, we'll look at the details of that just a minute. But let's welcome you and get you to sit in the seat and relax, because CT has gone to a different African country this week. He has the proverb for us today, and he's going to tell you what that is, and then we're going to ask you to give us your interpretation of the proverb. Is that all right?
Yes.
Okay.
We are in the Republic of the Sudan. Okay, the Sudan is part of the geopolitical region within the African continent that we refer to as the Coup Belt. Countries whose existence since independence have been characterized by one coup after another, after another. Sudan has had their fair share. They're doing quite well, actually. In terms of coups, they've had 7 since the independence in 1958. So, not a good thing, because it creates immense humanitarian problems, and it is suffering and untold and unwanted hardships. The proverb: empty stomachs have no roots. Manaburu, what do you think this proverb means? Empty stomachs have no roots.
I would not be able to interpret that, I think.
Okay, tell us what you think about it.
Yes, maybe it's food for thought. Something that I would need to think about. Because Mr. Muga has...
No, surely. You know, let me tell you one of the things about these proverbs that make them very easy. It is that you can't interpret it wrongly. And the reason is because we're asking your opinion. These things mean so many things to so many people. It is not possible. It isn't one of these Kenyan exams where you have to get it right. Everything you say will be right, because that will be how you look at it. Yes.
Of course, the different perspectives.
Yes.
You say no roads.
Yes.
So where there is no road, then you would not be able to get to a destination.
Roots. Empty stomachs have no roots. Zizi.
Roots. Empty stomachs have no roots.
Yes.
I would say that the stomach keeps asking.
The stomach keeps asking. You see?
You knew.
You were right there.
You are spot on. The stomach never stops asking.
Yeah.
Never. Yes.
It never stops asking, and neither do those who are in a position of need, isn't it?
True.
And that forms the basis for a conversation that we'll have this morning. Since the 20th of January, the world essentially has been reeling from the effects of certain pronouncements that were made by the President of the United States. And that was as concerns aid that, development programs that would essentially either come to a halt or would be severely impacted by the reduction of these much needed funds in different areas. And the area of refugees does not fall out of this. It is right there. And, as the Commissioner for Refugee Affairs, we're looking at Kenya as a host nation for quite a number of refugees. I believe it is second after Ethiopia on the continent, second after Ethiopia. And so hundreds of thousands of people been through the refugee program over the last 20 to 30 years, whether we're looking at those that were taken in from Central Africa, whether we're looking at those who were taken in from the Horn, wherever there was a conflict, even outside of the region, Kenya has played host. Now, this has been funded by a lot of dollars that come from outside the region, outside of Africa. So what threat, essentially, does the reduction of this funding then pose towards the status of care for refugees in Kenya? That's the conversation that we'll be having today. And let's go into that. First of all, did it hit when the announcement was made, and how?
Of course, the announcement hit us unexpectedly, because we have hosted refugees since independence. And if you allow, when we got independence, we had about 20,000 refugees. And then they had what we call free movement. Over time, in the early 80s, we continued to get influx, especially after 1971, Idi Amin and such, more Ugandans, mainly professionals. Some were doctors, others were teachers. And then the numbers grew, and we had 13 small camps: Utange, Jomvu, Thika, Garissa, Kakuma. And in 1990, when Said Barre government fell in Somalia, then the influx would be about 200 in a day, in a week. And that influx necessitated the government to invite the United Nations High Commission for Refugees to support in the emergency response, together with the International Red Cross and the other agencies. And the government also resolved to merge or to locate the camps in Dadaab and also Kakuma and merge the 13. So the current existing refugee camps were gazetted then in 1990, and from there the numbers have been growing. Today we have 836, 907 registered refugees and asylum seekers, mainly from East Africa, Horn of Africa, and the Great Lakes region. And we also have refugees from as far as Afghanistan. The distribution is 423,000 in Dadaab, and 302 in Kakuma, 302,000, and 110,000 in the refugee, in the urban areas, mainly 60% in Nairobi, Nakuru, Eldoret, Mombasa.
How many did you say are in Dadaab, sorry?
Dadaab, 423,000.
423, okay.
Yes, and 302 in Kakuma.
In Kakuma, right.
Of that population, 475,000 are from Somalia, constituting 56% of the refugee population in the country. And 196,000 are South Sudanese. Traditionally, we have been supported by United Nations High Commission for Refugees, UNHCR. World Food Programme provides a humanitarian assistance, the monthly token, the minimum basket per family. And other agencies like UNICEF provide child care, child medication, education support. International Refugee Committee provides, as an implementing agency of USAID, provides medical attention. And therefore, I would say that the support that we get from USAID is mainly in the medical area. They run and have set up a whole level 4 hospital. It is in Kakuma. And that hospital is funded in terms of the medical personnel, pharmaceutical and non-pharmaceutical by USAID. Through the support by the implementing agency, that is IRC, International Refugee Committee. International Refugee Committee, with the announcement, has laid off 100 staff. What does that mean? It means that refugee access to our 19 health facilities in the 2 camps of Dadaab and Kakuma will be affected substantially because the medical personnel have now to be provided by the government, which the government preparedness is not there. And of course, you already see the challenges that are there with our medical personnel across the board. So that is compounding the challenge and access of medical staff. Lactating mothers will not get attention. Prenatal and postnatal, all those issues in relation to the refugees and the host community will be affected because such a big facility was accessible and enjoyed by the host as well as the refugees. And so that is a challenge that we have in terms of direct, that is medical.
Right. Does it stop immediately? Or are we saying that it's a today you wake up tomorrow situation where lactating mothers will not get the nourishment that they need, whereby you will not be able to see that medical care is given to those who might walk into a camp facility? Is it immediate?
It is immediate. As we speak, we are grappling on how do we bridge the gap? How do we manage the situation? Because what has been reviewed is only and given a waiver is only UNHCR continued support on protection, resettlement, and advocacy on the aspect of the refugee registration and documentation. The aspect of USAID, they are supposed to focus on life-saving issues, not those ones which are off their mandate. And therefore, humanitarian, again, World Food Programme has also been affected. It's not funded through USAID. Let me say that... the
World Food Programme is a UN agency, is it not?
It is a UN agency.
Yes.
And let me paint the picture about the dire straits that we have in terms of the humanitarian assistance and the changing humanitarian landscape globally. In 2023, World Food Programme was providing 60% minimum basket, meaning the nutrition, the token was available up to 60%. 2024, it came down to 45%. Okay. 2025, we are at 40%. And we are told by the World Food Programme it is up to June.
Allow me to understand what this token is on a monthly. What does this token entail?
That is the minimum food basket that one should be able to access.
Okay.
That provides for the family.
Okay.
And it looks at the vulnerability per family. How vulnerable is the family? And previously, it has been blankets, meaning that everybody was getting an equal basket. However, we are working on a framework which we call differentiated assistance.
Yeah.
But let me go back first to the percentages.
Yes.
So from June, it is expected to dip beyond 20%. meaning that you keep removing from the minimum basket items.
Okay.
More so nutrition.
Right.
And the mothers that are now maybe pregnant, expectant, and the children, therefore, we are looking at a spike in malnutrition.
So let me I'm sorry to have, because I think this is really important, that when we talk about the reduction in the percentage of the token, we're not saying that there's a reduction in how many people get it. What we are saying is that there's a reduction in what is in the thing. So if you were previously getting, a ration of maize meal, and if you got dehydrated milk, or if you got other cereals, we're saying that now maybe if you got a 1 kg packet, it's reduced to 500 grams. If you got milk, maybe now that's removed and you get soya, for example.
It's a quantity that is reduced.
The quantity of everything in the token that has been reduced.
And when the quantity reduces, it also reduces in terms of products. And those products also affect the dietary needs of the beneficiaries, meaning that if you have a family that requires milk and the milk is reduced, it means that it will be very hard hit, because you have nowhere else to go and look for milk. And therefore those nutritional needs will be affected, overall affecting the health of the family.
Yeah. So, John, as you talk about the effect of the cut from USA, now how that is affecting your operations, there is now the aspect of the fact that refugees are under international laws, and those that are seeking asylum here and whatnot are here rightfully under the international law. And here is the government of the day, the government of Kenya, has the responsibility to shoulder these because they are in their territory. But the government of the day would say, we do not have the muscle to extend this support because we have our own people to think about. Now, is it then the government of Kenya having these discussions in order to be able to get further assistance to be able to run their affairs? Is that conversation ongoing?
There's what we call shared responsibility. The unsustainability of managing refugees started way back in 2016 when the UNHCR took a resolution to the General Assembly. And then the New York Declaration was made, where countries were called upon to look for innovative and sustainable ways of managing their refugees. That was followed by what we call the Global Compact on Refugees. What measures, what aspects of sustainability and strategies would you have as a country? Because globally, yes, the UN Convention obligates a host country and a signatory to the UN Convention of 1951 to be able to receive, protect, and of course give access to services and support them. And that has been ongoing. But globally, there has been that reality of the unsustainability of the humanitarian approach. And subsequent to that, the principle of shared responsibility, Global Compact on Refugees, where the international community steps in to support the host country. Kenya has done its international obligation, welcoming, receiving, protecting. Of course, we have invested quite a lot of substantial resources in terms of protecting the camps. The host community have also donated community land in Garissa and well as in Turkana. And a lot of other Kenyans bear a lot of support. Let me put it to you that even when we talk about IRC and USAID support in the medical area, Kenyan government, through the normal allocation, gives support. Ministry of Education again gives support in terms of access to education. And we run what we call a LIM scholarship that supports the refugees. So the taxpayer of Kenya already is bearing a cost. Not to speak about the aspect of the security.
Yes.
So the government has already borne its responsibility. Open its doors, what we call open door policy. And again, we now have set up camps. And it's for those who are able to work, they are living within the urban areas. We have provided them with a movement pass to stay and change of address from the camp to the urban area. But that is just 110,000. All others are in the camp. And let me say this, there are 3 durable solutions. What we call durable solutions is a sustainability avenues that a refugee may be supported. One is a third country resettlement, where we get quotas. America, Canada, Austria, Norway, Netherlands, and all. I would say since 2013, 98,000 are the ones who have migrated to and resettled to Austria and other countries. And let me also paint this picture. In 2016, when President Obama was leaving, Kenya was getting an annual quota of 5,000 refugees to be settled in America. When Trump came in, president, by the time he left in 2020, we were down to 800.
Okay.
Meaning a reduction. That was a serious scale down. Right now, 2025 is a no. Flights have been cancelled, and therefore it means that the resettlement aperture has closed. When America has coughed, Europe has got the fever, and therefore they are also rethinking, and they are closing their borders. You have seen Germany have won elections because close our borders, no more refugees.
It's the nationalist way.
Precisely.
Yeah.
So it is incumbent in the country to think, is this sustainable to host? Yes, you have the international obligation, but you have also a national obligation, which is primary to your citizens.
So what was taken into consideration when you look at 1951, the UN Convention on Refugees and all of that? So when countries come and have a global conversation, and essentially there are certain parts of international humanitarian law that requires certain things that come into place, you ratify certain things.
Yes,
ratification means we're going to go ahead with this. That means that there is a national responsibility that comes up with taking up some of these things. Park that. Number 2, depending on aid also gives you the notion that at some time it will come to an end. By virtue of the fact that you have different leaders who come into positions means that somebody, means that somebody could wake up one morning and decide, well, we're not going to do this anymore. And that will bear heavily on then the responsibilities, like what we see of 836,000 people who are, almost 1 million people in the country who need help. So my mind is trying. Then we have the Refugee Act of 2021 that was passed in Kenya's parliament with no pressure from anybody outside, which meant that Kenya was going to support, Kenya was going to provide for, Kenya was going to secure the livelihoods of refugees in the country. So understanding that, number 1, aid could come to an end and that there are these almost 1 million people living in the country, I'm curious as to what was the plan, knowing full well how nations operate.
First and foremost, Kenya is a member of the Group of Nations.
Yes.
It's obligated by being a signatory to UN Convention of 1951. And further, it's the 1967 protocol. It's also a signatory to the OAU Convention of 1969 with specific aspects to problems of refugees in Africa. Kenya is also further a member of IGAD. And in 2017, we had the IGAD declarations, one in Mombasa on medical, refugees to be accessing medical, and how member countries would be able to facilitate that. On education, the IGAD declaration was done by heads of state in Djibouti. On jobs and livelihoods, it was done in Kampala. And in Nairobi, we had the Somali registration and reintegration of refugees into Somalia. And with that, together with the Refugee Act of number 10 of 2021,
yes,
we have the legal framework policies and regional body declarations that support refugee hosting by the Kenyan government. But the unpreparedness of our country in terms of the long-term support. What is the strategy of the refugee hosting? The government has been rethinking, and in 2022, we started what was called Marshall Plan, which we have christened into Shirika Plan. Shirika Plan is a blueprint by government to progressively integrate the refugees into with the host communities, socio-economic integration.
Right.
And that is where now the crux of the matter is. Why? Because the Kenyans are very skeptical. You have heard the narrative about registering refugees and giving them IDs and all that. Refugees today, under legal notice number 143 of 2023, September, the Cabinet Secretary gazetted 6 refugee identification documents. The asylum seeker's pass, proof of registration, the letter of recognition, movement pass, refugee ID, and what we call conventional travel document, which is a refugee passport. So those are the 6 refugee identification documents. And further to that, Shirika Plan first is supposed to come and include the refugees into the productivity of the country, opening the frameworks that support them to move from the camps to integrated settlements. There are 6 programs that are running as interventions to support the sustainability of refugees and the transformation of refugee hosting areas to commercial hubs. One is Kenya Primary Early Learning Program, which started in 2022 with a $60 million support or grant by World Bank, looking at addressing the unequal education outcomes of these regions. Supporting expansion of schools, we have 49 camp-based schools.
Okay.
And accreditation of teachers, provision of hot meals, sanitary towels to the girls, that is education. And offering scholarships. And last year, we offered 8,000 scholarships to refugee children and host community, and they are spread across our national schools. We have Kenya Urban Support Program 2. That is where the Dadaab and Kakuma have become municipalities.
Okay.
And their infrastructure of their amenities would be upgraded to a municipal status.
Okay, let's take a break at this point and come back and see, okay, so then what could happen? What should happen? We know that funding has been cut, but what happens to these almost 1 million people in terms of their livelihoods? And we're going to come back and continue with that conversation. John Burugu is the Commissioner for Refugee Affairs, and we're having a conversation about what happens after aid. Let me remind you that you can bite into your most favorite foods, take a drink from the ice cold drink that you normally enjoy, and you don't have to imagine what that would be without pain. You can actually live it just the way you like it. You don't have to imagine anymore, because Sensodyne is here to give you the ultimate relief from tooth sensitivity. And how do we know this? Because it is the #1 recommended brand by dentists. And with World Oral Health Day coming up, we are reminding you that a happy mouth is a happy mind. And to get this, Sensodyne is giving you 50% off of certain products. And to keep your health, keep your teeth and your tooth health strong, all you need to do is grab a pack from any Carrefour, Naivas, Chandarana or Quickmart stores between the 20th and 23rd of March. Sensodyne for tooth sensitivity relief and everyday oral health.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
Traffic updates brought to you by M-Pesa.
All right, taking a look at what's happening with traffic. We're stepping out of traffic hour not too far from now. Just a little bit of that left on Uhuru Highway as you get towards Haile Selassie and into the city. Landis Road just has a bit of that as well, touching on Kamkunji at the roundabout. The Thika Superhighway traffic is coming in heavy on right around Survey, and Kiambu Road still has a bit of that. But we're getting through towards the end of it this Monday morning over that traffic hump. And I think we'll be fine through the morning. You can keep talking to us as we try to keep things moving. SpiceFM KE on X.
Traffic updates brought to you by M-Pesa. Calling all rugby enthusiasts. We're on the hunt for girls and young women who are passionate about rugby and ready to bring the best cheer to the global cheer squad for Kenya Sevens. Show your love for the sport by sharing your most spirited cheer videos on social media, tagging SpiceFM and using hashtag M-Pesa behind every moment.
Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
23 minutes to the top of the hour, having a conversation this morning with John Burugu, who is the Commissioner for Refugee Affairs, and looking at what has happened as a result of the funding cuts that we see.
Yeah, and as we talk about results of the funding cuts, let's just look at what Kenya has tried to do previously. We go back to April 2021 when Kenya issued a 14-day ultimatum to NHCR to develop a plan for closing Dadaab, and then the court ruled against that. Now, 2021 UN High Commissioner Filippo Grandi assured that Kenya was not closing the camps but was looking at ways to make it sustainable. But in May 2023, Kenya initiated plans to transition Dadaab and Kakuma from traditional refugee camps to integrated. But now, as we talk about all these movements that are happening, it is happening at a time when the country itself does not have enough resources to take care of its own. And when we talk about integrating refugees into the republic, into the community, there is the question of how about us, the locals. But even as we talk about that, there are international laws that Kenya is a signatory to. You say that Kenya is a global of countries, and so is the United States of America. One would beg to ask if America can decide to go against the global agreements, why should Kenya respect the same and just close the refugees and say kila mtu arudi kwao?
I think it calls for the rethink by the top executive of the country. The national interest. America is pursuing its national interest, inward looking, with the primary responsibility to its citizens, building its economy, securing its borders and all that. I'm not saying that Kenya is not doing that, but it is time. I would agree that it is the stoppage is what we call a wake-up call. The wake-up call for us to rethink how Kenya is going to sustainably manage the refugees in the country. Yes. One of the aspects, even when we are implementing Shirika plan, that is going to do socio-economic inclusion, we are looking in between there also about the aspect of giving labor access, providing work permits to the refugees, ensuring that they operate within our business laws and frameworks, that those who are enterprising are able to make a living that way and make a contribution. Move away from folding hands into active contribution to the country. But overall, the country leadership must rethink, because even if for example, taking it that we will implement Shirika plan and it's successful progressively, where is the cut line? You look at the situation currently in Sudan and the knock-on effect to South Sudan. South Sudan is currently hosting 1 million refugees from Sudan. And that knock-on effect comes to Kakuma. Look at DR Congo. There is 800,000 refugees currently in Burundi. They are not able to feel comfortable to get into Rwanda and Uganda. So they are looking for ways through Tanzania or others to come to Nairobi, to come to Kenya. Therefore, these 800 we are talking about, maybe by the close of the year will be 1 million plus. We are 5th in Africa and 13th globally hosting refugees. The country needs to rethink the long term. For the immediate, we'll grapple with how to manage the refugee humanitarian stoppage. We will, in immediate term, implement Shirika plan with the political goodwill of the host political leaderships. But there is that question by the bigger population, 51 million Kenyans. What about us? Why are you prioritizing refugees? That is for the government to answer. And the top leadership, therefore, must strategically think about the risks, the benefits. Of course, the refugees have capacity, they have potential, they have competencies that we can tap as a country. But how, for how long? If other countries are rethinking their international obligation, we have had reforms about African Union. We have had reforms about UN system. Why are we not having reforms in the refugee area? So that then countries, member countries and refugee hosting countries obligated under UN convention can be able to voice their concerns, their burden, and see how the international community is stepping in. Because what we have today is that the global north is looking at containment. Keep your refugees where they are.
Yes.
Let them not come to us. So for us as a region, initially we had that IGAD approach, looking at sustainability of the refugees within the region. The East African community, some of the countries have not ratified whatever they agree with. I'll give you an example. When they talked about free movement of East Africans and using an ID, and I've used it to go to Uganda. Only Uganda, Rwanda, and Kenya have implemented and allow that practice, that an East African can go within a temporary pass of an ID. But other member countries have said no. Let them use a passport. So we have issues even within our bloc. So as a country, we must rethink what is our strategic objective of continued international obligation, regional obligation, and yes, we care for the humanity. But it is also important to know that you have other humanity who are your citizens, the primary objective, obligation.
Yes.
And therefore, the services, yes, that we are talking about in the 6 programs that World Bank is supporting, are for the host and host as well as the refugee. Window for host and refugee, that is Turkana and Garissa. But it takes more than that. The burden on security is serious. You know, the 2015, where that closure you are talking about, it was occasioned by the Garissa University attack.
Yes.
And the traceback was to the radicalization and the Al-Shabaab elements within the camp. That is why Kabios and IFO camps were closed that time. And that was a tripartite between UNHCR, Somalia and Kenya to repatriate. Midstream, that was stopped because of diplomatic engagements. And true to it, let's say that Kenya is a stabilizer in the region. Stabilizer by receiving the forcefully displaced populations. But for how long? And the refugees that we host today, we look at them from the security prism. Because they are pushed to us through the protracted conflict situation the region finds itself. So if our country is not properly structured in terms of the long-term management of refugees, our country can also be affected. And if it is affected, so where are we going to get the refuge? So it is incumbent in the top executive of the country to relook this, get a balance between the international obligation and the national obligation.
But this is the not a tomorrow problem, that this is an unfolding today, every minute need problem today. That the funding didn't say, I'm going to wait for other countries to get their, their act together, and then I'm going to cut the funding. No. They said, we are done today. Now, as is their right, they're not taking into consideration and all the many things that fall as a result of that. But I'm stuck on this 836,907 that we talk about today.
And counting.
Who need help today? Who need these interventions today? Who've been depending on these rations? Maybe some of them got their monthly ration last month and a little bit of that is still left. But then what happens when the month is up? What happens to medical? What happens to the things that funding was taken care of that is no longer being taken care of today?
I must appreciate Minister, our Cabinet Secretary, Honorable Malcolm, because when he came in barely 3 months ago, We have held about 4 meetings. First, we met the humanitarian support organizations, World Food Program, UNHCR, WFP, as well as UNICEF, to look at the humanitarian situation in the country. How is it? Without stoppage, how much are we affected? And that is the dire situation, that picture that was painted by WFP in terms of the reduction dipping to 20% by June. And yes, there has been some communication again from America that yes, the sustainability of 40% would go to December. But that is only a 6 months increase. As you mentioned, the concern would be how do we bridge the immediate, the medium term, as well as the long term? Because this is not a problem that is not going away, and it is important that we structure ourselves as government. This is already at the desk of the cabinet secretary. He is aware about the situation. In terms of the Shirika plan, again, we had a meeting of consultations of the organizations that want to support various aspects or sectors, whether it is water, whether it is health, whether it is education, environment and all. And we have International Labour Organization and all these other organizations to see how best this intervention can be rolled out, because it is important that we have a sustainable way of managing refugees and hosting them here. They cannot be kept in the camp when they are hungry. We have had protests. I hope that you have seen that in Kakuma we have had a week of protests. And that is just a tip of the iceberg. So after June, it will be very serious for us.
I mean, when you talk about refugees in this country, I want you to extrapolate it further, because we've seen that even in East Africa, we are not even united when it comes to the movement of people. But let's go to the African Union. And the African Union in 1969 passed a convention that would see how they would handle these issues. But if you go further on some of the challenges that we have, it is funding shortages and political goodwill in addressing these issues, which goes back to the question of, we have this problem as Africans. Why are we not coming together in finding solutions to our problems and have to depend on US aid to be able to sort this out? Why is it so difficult, you as a stakeholder, for African governments to intentionally put aside funds that would bridge this gap and help the people in the continent?
Various African governments have different approaches to refugee management, despite them having been a signatory to the OAU Convention of 1969, and that convention is worded that it is supposed to address specific problems affecting refugees in Africa. And therefore, it means, that when countries adopt different approaches, they lack a common way of resolving the issues of refugees. In West Africa, there is free movement of refugees, settlement from Senegal to Ghana. You check East Africa, it is different. You go to SADC countries, it is different. So it's like Africa is managing refugee in terms of blocks. The IGAD member countries I mentioned, the 8 of them made those IGAD declaration, the 4 IGAD declarations in 2017, which means anybody who is out of IGAD bloc would not again benefit from these declarations. It means that African Union, and I would say that African Union, maybe it is, of course, it is beyond me in terms of addressing the African Union, but it has not been forthright in terms of addressing. It has not been strategic in terms of addressing and the management of refugees. Like now, even with the stoppage, they have left every country to grapple with the challenges. There has not been a continental approach to the principle that America is obligated, like Kenya is obligated, like other African countries hosting refugees, and therefore the principle of shared responsibility, where we share the burden. I host them and you feed them. You support the other services, and I support the security and the hosting and documentation
and education.
So that shared responsibility principle has been neutered by American approach, but the African Union is quiet. So those are issues that obviously heads of state should be able to address. And back home, it is for us again as a top executive of the country to look at how best can they manage the 836 refugees, because the stoppage is not going to go away. It may temporarily be lifted.
Yeah.
But does that prepare the country? So there is need for country preparedness as in the management, overall management of the refugees, so that then they do not present a situation where they are competing for jobs with the Kenyans. The Kenyans feel that they are defranchised in one way or the other, and the priority is given to the refugees. We must balance the national obligation against the international one, and pursue the national interest and national security.
You know, it is strange. If you look at our continent, every corner you turn, there's some form of turmoil taking place.
Yes.
And it contributes to this discussion that we're having now, because the citizens then leave. So when it comes to even assisting, if you have a government that is fighting for survival, because it's under siege from its own citizens, because it's an internal conflict, and that internal conflict has a ripple effect of displacing its citizenry. Even when they have relative peace, one doesn't get the impression that this idea of actually ensuring that there's peace in the country, because if they were at peace, there would be no issue of refugees.
Yes.
Exactly. So cause, consequences, effect. So as a country, we find ourselves between a rock and a hard place, clearly. Because we're doing what we can, what is humanly possible, but in the absence of help, because
it becomes impossible.
Yes, because we are having difficulties just meeting the obligations of the citizenry of the country. Now, if you give us an additional burden, in the absence of that help, how then is it possible?
I think that is where now the call to leadership, where the balance must be struck. And the international obligation is not something that should cast the country into a situation where it cannot be able to take its position. You are obligated internationally, but the primary is the country. And we have strained in the resources of education, health, transport, environment, addressing our core issues, agriculture, food sustainability. And therefore, if we are still grappling with those ones, when we also now step forward in terms of the international obligation, sobriety is called upon.
Absolutely. I mean, is it not that national interest that has put this situation where it is? Because one country took up its national interest vis-a-vis what the rest of the world was expecting it to do. The United States said, hang on, no, we're going to look inward for some time and we're going to figure out what we're doing, and because of that, these funding cuts will come. Very simple. Whether you want to abuse them and tell them that they have a tyrant president, that is your problem. They've decided, look, this is what we are going to do. Now, you would probably become persona non grata of the world if Kenya said, okay, we cannot do this anymore. Now, nobody's advocating for that, but I hear what you're saying in the sense that perhaps Kenya needs to look insular and say, you know what, can we actually handle this? Can we handle this without this support? And if we're not getting the support from here, is there somewhere else we can get it? That what was the plan in the very beginning? And if we're not able to follow that plan, is it time that this wave that is hitting the rest of the world hits Kenya as well?
Let us look at refugee. Refugee is a temporary. Refugee response was an emergency response.
Yes.
It is no longer an emergency. 35 years down the line hosting refugees.
There are people who have grown up in the camps. There
Precisely.
are people who've come to the camp as babies, have been through an education system, have gotten married in the camp and left the camp at 40 years old.
Precisely. So that is what I'm saying.
That's not an emergency.
It is no longer an emergency. We have to look for innovative, sustainable management of refugees.
Yes.
And the obligation. There's what we call soft and hard diplomacy. It's for the country to decide which one it wants. And there is no shying away from the barrage that may come if it is necessary. You cannot compromise the security of the country, the national security, public order, because you have 800,000 refugees in the camp who have no food, who become now a insecurity situation against the security of 51 million Kenyans. So it is for the country to decide. And I'm sure that discussion is ongoing at the top level of the country. And again, involving the organizations, UNHCR included, the top level representatives of the government of America in the country. But it's also incumbent also on Kenyans to know that refugees are humans.
Yes.
Nobody wishes to be a refugee. They find themselves in that situation, and it is for us to welcome. We respect their human dignity, their human rights, and we have been according them all the access and support we can. But the resources are really strained. In terms of land, in terms of security, in terms of the water and all this. Refugee hosting areas are SAR areas. Water is a scarcity. And therefore, when we have additional population, it even becomes dire. And the World Food Program does not support water.
Yeah.
So it is for us to rethink long-term strategies. And it is not going to be tomorrow. It must be today. In fact, it should have been yesterday. Because this is something that has been with us. And because this has happened abruptly, just like how it is happening in other trade areas, in relation to humanitarian support and assistance of refugees, the shock therapy that the current American administration has globally extended should also now be a wake-up call for us.
Absolutely.
Yes. Calling it shock therapy. But just for conversation's sake, I mean, if you look at what is happening across the world, America is looking inward and saying, we will block our borders. If you go to the UK as well, they're saying, we are willing to have our people, but first go to Rwanda, then get processed, then come this side. But here we have, as Kenya, we're having over 800,000 people. Perhaps the government, and not just the government of Kenya, but African Union needs to rethink how it's handling its own people and find solutions internally. Although it is said African Union is a toothless dog.
Well, I mean, look, I think there are emergency conversations and then there are emergency actions that need to take place in terms of what's happening now. Like I said, Kenya doesn't want to be the one who diplomatically is blamed for tossing 800,000 people out of its country. But at the same time, what's the rest of the world doing when it comes to making sure that their people are secured first? It's a tough conversation, but it's a necessary one. And we thank you for being here with us to have it this morning. John Burugu is the Commissioner for Refugee Affairs. He's been our guest this hour talking about very important things, and we must keep this discourse front and center. Thank you for being in the hot seat of the Situation Room this morning. Thank you for starting off the week with us. It's 10 o'clock. We'll talk again tomorrow, God willing, at 6. Good morning.
Spice up your life